The Browns, they're putrid. They're the worst team in the NFL.
The season, the 2024 season is over.
Lamar Jackson can't win the playoffs. He'll win a third MVP, though, so that's great. Drew Sample is the most important piece of the Bengals offense next year.
Go Joe Burrow. He deserves to be MVP. I wish he was the Browns quarterback. Kind of mean that.
If you're looking for the most reactionary, silly, and unserious show on the internet, then you're home. Live from Hamilton, Ohio, it's Off the Bench by Chatterbox Sports on 1410 ESPN Radio.
Hey, welcome in Off the Bench, presented by UDF, post-first round draft edition of the show, of course. No Casey McAllister today, so we got Jacob back in the producer chair, of course. We got myself, Justin Kinner, Jacob Tissett in the producer chair, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Elliott Rearing. Mr. Elliott Rearing, good morning. How are we, sir?
I'm good. What was that? I feel like that was weird. I was just a little clap for Elliott. That's what we're doing?
I'm sorry. Big clap.
Thank you. I don't know why I got the little.
Don't swerve off the road, folks.
I don't know why I got the little clap. Yeah, it's a good day again. Listen, good weather, feels good outside. Who knows? Who knows what the weekend holds for us? Hopefully, it holds a little bit more optimism for the Bengals. That's what I can hope for there. But listen, I thought the draft last night was fun. Every year we go to my buddy's apartment and we watch the draft. I'm going to say this right now, and I know it sounds like an old man. The draft is ruined because Ari, whatever, and the rest of the reporters, they tweet these picks out 30 picks in advance. I knew who the Bengals were taking 15 minutes before the pick was made. What are we doing? We got to stop. We got to take a good look at ourselves, and we got to stop. And Schefter and that stupid jacket hoodie combo with a tie coming out of his hoodie, it made no sense. I didn't like it. I didn't like it. Last night's draft, I didn't love it a whole lot. It was fun because I was with my friends, and that's what it's all about, the NFL draft. It's about our friends. But saying that, there needs to be some improvements. We got to stop spoiling picks 35 minutes in advance.
See, I'm pro spoiling picks. We put a poll in the chat last night.
I voted for it.
We were a pro. You voted for spoiling picks?
I voted for you spoiling the picks.
Okay.
I thought that was what the question was.
You didn't want to see him spoiled. You just wanted me to tell you.
I wanted you to spoil it for them.
Okay. Well, I guess
because I think that's a funnier bit.
That's fine. But yeah, certainly. I mean, obviously we were live last night for the whole first round. That was a good time. But yeah, when I'm watching the draft on my own, I'm just power scrolling Twitter, refreshing as quickly as I can. I try to get to 32 before they get to 20 and just see how quickly I can get ahead. Sometimes you find out some picks in the second round, late in the first round, and that's always fun.
We knew we knew the Browns were trading that pick 9 hours in advance. That's no fun.
You didn't want to know till they got on the clock?
Huh?
You didn't want to know till they got on the clock?
Yeah, I want that to be an in-the-moment thing.
I don't think they should tell us about free agents. And at the start of the next year, we just be like, holy cow, Stephon Diggs is a Patriot?
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
You just show up and like, wait a minute, is that who I think it is?
Yeah.
I like that.
No, so for the show last night, Kevin and I, we just turned Twitter off completely because
Smart.
we put our phones down. We just wanted to react to it in live time just because, like, putting out the tweet, then it's like, well, might as well just – there's no point in doing the reactionary show. How did you guys do your – I mean, did you let it spoil your – yeah. Did you let it spoil yours?
Oh, on purpose. Like, I look for it. So I don't fall in the camp of, someone that would be upset. I certainly was digging for the Bengals pick as soon as there was any kind of bubbling of it getting close. Certainly the Cardinals pick was the one that was the most upsetting. I was obviously been a big Walter Nolan guy on this show for a long time. He goes the pick before the Bengals. When I heard about that one, I was crushed.
I like to be surprised. One thing, so I know at Christmas every year, my wife's family does this thing where they'll ask you what you want for Christmas and tell them exactly what you want for Christmas. That's exactly what you get for Christmas. There's no surprise. Like, you know what I mean? They wrap it. I'm like, don't wrap it. If I've told you what I want and you said you got it, don't wrap it. Don't waste that time and energy. I'm not that way, though. I don't like to know what I'm getting. I also, when people tell me what they want, I don't give them what they tell me. Technically, I might do one or two and then get a surprise in there. I like to be surprised. I like the shock element, the surprise element. So when it comes to the draft, I think it feels like, what's the point of unwrapping the draft pick if you already know who it is?
That's fair.
I don't care for it. I don't like it.
I was that genius child that, every single year at Christmas I would ask my mom for one gift because then I had to get it. And usually I did pretty well, and then I got some pretty big ideas some years, and that didn't work. As for a car, when I was like 12, obviously I didn't get a car. But everything else usually worked out for me.
And to be fair, in case family's watching, I'm very appreciative of the gifts I get. I don't want to sound like I'm unappreciative. I guess the point is like that was my family's everything's a surprise. They want to surprise you with something. I had to get used to that. But yeah, when it comes to the draft, I want to be surprised. I don't want to know what's under the wrapping paper when you open it up. But my team right off the bat started everyone off with the surprise. We'll get to that coming up here in a bit. Winners and losers of the draft.
Before we get into the actual picks and everything about the draft last night, your best friend in our chat, Mouse Cop, does bring up a great point. You know, we might have thought maybe the Browns avoided Shedeur Sanders in the first round, but obviously he's still on the board. Browns picking 33 and 36. He asks if you're still prepared to become a Bengals fan if the Browns turn in that Shedeur Sanders card, or was that a first-round only rule?
Yeah, the fine print. The fine print.
I figured.
The fine print, you know.
There's great value now. There's tremendous value.
Well, unless you had him graded as like a fourth rounder coming in, then it'd still be a reach.
No.
So, but...
Is that what you had?
Well, and I was telling Jake before, I'm like, if Cleveland was going to take a quarterback at 33, I wish they would have traded up to take whichever quarterback, whether it's Shedeur or Milroe, because you get that fifth-year option. If you draft a quarterback in the first round, any player in the first round, you get that fifth-year option. They've waived that. So if you take a quarterback here at number 33, to me, it doesn't make any sense, but we'll get to that.
We've seen one quarterback in the last 3 years drafted in the second round for exactly that reason. If you like someone good enough to take them in the top 50 or so picks, you're going to try to trade up in the first round and get that fifth year, especially someone in the Browns situation where, you know, you're trying to tread in water at the quarterback position while you have Deshaun Watson still to deal with.
I mean, Shedeur can act like he's surprised that he dropped out of the first, but I think at the end of the day, there's a reason you held your watch party outside of Green Bay, and it's not because it's Green Bay. It's because you knew that there was a chance that was going to happen.
Can he run back the room tonight?
That's what everyone's asking.
I don't know.
So he did this, that one of those rooms with that couch, he was supposed to go do his interview from there with his legendary brand plastered all over it. I mean, do you keep the same ribbons and banners and streams and all that stuff going?
I certainly wouldn't, but you know, to each of their own. I guess if they want to make it a spectacle and prove the haters wrong.
His draft party sponsors were his own brand. So is he just losing a ton of money if he doesn't, though?
That's a good Barstool bit, by the way. I think that I don't know.
For once, it's not us stealing the bits.
Yeah. I think it's, I don't know. If he goes, could you imagine if he goes one more round without getting taken?
It'd be pretty funny.
I mean, it would be the funniest thing of all time if they got that party back together and everything like that.
Saturday afternoon.
Oh, that would be brutal.
Did you see Shiloh? So Shiloh said, "Man, if they're doing this to you, what are they going to? I mean,
that was actually funny. I thought that was funny. Way to be self-aware, Shiloh.
So, but Shedeur also does this thing where he ends like all of his speeches with legendary. Like he drops his brand. Like, can you imagine if Trace, when doing the show, all right, that wraps it up for us. Thanks, guys. This has been Off the Bench. Chatterbox. Like if you just, all right, guys, I'm leaving. Chatterbox. Like if you just yell your brand every freaking time you leave a room. Like
I literally couldn't imagine it. And how bad do you think those meetings went?
Oh my gosh!
Like the meetings with the teams had to have been the worst meetings ever, right? I mean, he was predicted to go number 2 at a time, and now it's not even a first-round pick. That's crazy. When the Steelers didn't take him, I laughed out loud.
Not only did the Steelers not take, not only did Cleveland not take him, the Steelers didn't take him. The Giants didn't take him. The Giants jumped back into the first round and didn't take him again. And not only did they not take him for the second time, they took another questionable quarterback in Jackson Dart. So very interesting. I thought last night's draft was entertaining as hell. I thought the surprise.
I thought it was a lot of fun.
I think Shedeur not getting drafted is what kept everyone hanging on each pick, especially as it got later and later. You start mapping out the teams. Especially as you get later, those are all the teams with quarterbacks that obviously had deep playoff runs or are set at quarterback. Started doing process of elimination. None of those. None of those teams. At one point, I did think maybe the Lions. Maybe Jared Goff, because you draft a quarterback. I mean, it's very similar, obviously, to what Green Bay did years ago when you get Jordan Love. Like, obviously, Green Bay was in a position to win now at that time with Aaron Rodgers, but they still went the Jordan Love route. I thought the Lions could have done something similar there, but obviously they didn't. They went with an Ohio State player, of all players. So 4 Buckeyes taken.
4 Buckeyes, most in the draft for any single school.
A lot of mock drafts didn't have Emeka Egbuka going in the first round. He dropped over the last week or two. I was glad to see him go.
Yeah, that was dumb.
Yeah.
I mean,
with Kyler Murray throwing him the ball, good for them. But
Kyler Murray. Was there a draft night trade I didn't know about?
Oh, no.
What'd I say?
You said Kyler Murray throwing it to Emeka Egbuka?
Where did he go?
He's a Buccaneer, brother.
Oh no.
Oh, I put down the wrong team. My bad. Good catch.
I just like that he
good
said
catch.
he said in his post-draft interview, Bucks to Bucks, don't have to change like anything around my house. So
I wrote
if
down the
go
wrong
to
team.
Tampa
In
Bay-
my notes, I put that he went. I did a news hit this morning. I went on TV this morning and said that.
Oh, no.
Shit. I don't care. I'll go knock that out. That's on me.
That was one of the more questionable picks of the draft. I would say I love Emeka Ibuka, but you just paid Chris Godwin a lot of money to be your slot receiver. So
My bad,
I
but
think
yes,
there's some
I was
And the
questions.
thinking-
Cardinals just drafted Marvin Harrison last draft.
They were heavily linked in mocks and stuff to Emeka. A lot
It
of
don't
people
matter.
thought
I
he could
screwed
go
up.
there,
I don't
but-
need you guys to make me feel better. I screwed up. Twice.
That's okay.
You're
You know,
all right.
I had the volume down. We were doing the live show. I wasn't paying attention, writing stuff down in a hurry.
Yeah.
I'm thrown off. I'm worried I have to become a Bengals fan because Mouse Cop is kind of right. I did say
You said you weren't gonna be a fan.
I did say I'd become I'd become a Bengals fan. I'm trying to think like which jersey I want. I've buried Burrow way too much to buy a Burrow jersey. That'd be a little hypocritical. I don't know which.
AJ McCarron, he was almost the Browns quarterback.
Yeah.
Almost. Yeah.
That would have been awesome.
Damn, fax machine error kept that from happening. I mean, hate when that happens.
What about
but,
Fitzpatrick? Did he ever play quarterback for the Browns?
I mean, that's probably a safe bet, right?
I mean, 40 of them did. So did he?
I mean, so
He played for 15 teams, and Browns have had 40 quarterbacks.
He was the Bengals. Maybe he went to the Browns immediately after. I don't know. That could be like a tie-in if he went. But I don't know.
I'll ponder it. But there you go. All right, off the bench presented by UDF. Let's jump into who the Bengals selected with their number 17 pick in the first round. I would say the name, but God knows I'll probably get it wrong. Maybe someone else drafted this individual. I have no idea. But we'll be right back. We're off the bench when we come back. There's nothing worse than just being straight up wrong. I mean, I'm wrong pretty often, but that's going to piss me off. That's going to sit with me the rest of the day. Like, it's just going to sit with me and eat at me the rest of the day. Like,
That's okay.
we do a lot of hours of talk a day. I mean, I'm going to get most of it wrong. So
It was pointed out to me by Steve on Twitter yesterday that when I was going through the biggest bust in NFL history, I mispronounced every single name in the top 10. I mispronounced them all.
I mean, you went back to like the Great Depression. So
I did.
You set yourself up for failure.
To be fair to me, all the busts were in 1947, but that's like
Steve didn't care. He was trying to sick Marty on us.
I know he
He
was.
was.
I know he was, but I mispronounced all. And guess what? Just water off my shoulder like a duck, and that's what it's going to be. I have no issue with mispronouncing
Be a
every
goldfish.
single one of their names. This is an unserious. Go look at my Twitter bio right now. It says unserious, because that's what I am.
In fact, you should have just. That's how I was. Oh, I know it's Schleister, but I always call him Schlichter. That's what I call him. It's my nickname for
Little
him.
nickname,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like you meant to
Narco
do
way
it.
back.
But yeah, like older generation people, like they really get mad when you mispronounce names. Like,
Yeah.
and I get it. We do this. You should pronounce names correctly, but we're talking for what 20 hours a week, like. you
Elliot
know?
also just doesn't know who Art Schleister is.
And that's fair.
Never
and also,
heard of
it's
him.
not spelled like Schleister at all. So
Yeah, that's
Is
their
what
fault.
it is.
That's their fault.
yeah, Schlichter. I like it.
Thank you.
I like it. All right, Bengals. They were up at number. The draft started going in their favor early on. A lot of offensive players were coming off the board left and right. Certain position groups were dropping. It was really starting to line up for the Bengals to be able to have a pick of the litter as far as any of the top prospects that they wanted. Obviously, they go in the route of taking Shemar Stewart with the number 17 pick. I remember us talking about him. I remember Jacob was adamant that was one guy that he was really hesitant on them taking, and they fell for, of course, the fact that, hey, it's basically Myles Garrett without the production. Hoping that the production, of course, comes. But he checks off every box when it comes to the measurables, checks off every box when it comes to the physique and the look. I mean, he walks into a room, he's physically imposing. But then you look at his stats, you look at his numbers, there's nothing physically imposing about that whatsoever. A very polarizing pick. I don't want to say controversial because obviously I think that we need to kind of get to the season and see what exactly he can do. But I do find it very interesting that the Bengals continue to take risks with these picks when you need to be a little bit safer, in my opinion, just because I get that they weren't as aggressive as we thought they would be in free agency because of all the activity, of course, with keeping Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. Obviously taking care of Burrow the season before, getting whatever it was, but they're getting everyone paid and taken care of. They weren't as aggressive in free agency as you want, but with having so many dollars tied up to one side of the ball, obviously not wanting to marry Trey Hendrickson long term, the draft has to be their best friend. The draft has been the Chiefs' best friend. The draft has been the Eagles' best friend. When you look at the Super Bowl contenders around the league, it's not just because they have a great quarterback. If it's just about the quarterback, the Bengals are winning a Super Bowl the last couple of years. It's not just about the quarterback as much as we want to make it out to be. The biggest puzzle piece is getting the quarterback right, but you have to be able to hit in the draft. And that's something that the Bengals just haven't been able to do consistently enough. So with the team that has struggled in recent drafts especially, you start to look at some of the higher draft picks that they've had as of late, taking a little bit of risk. You think of Amarius Mims last year. Now, Mims has been solid, but the big knock on him was obviously, he didn't play a ton of games. What exactly are you getting with them? But he checked off all the measurables, of course, so that's one reason why they felt so confident in going in that direction. You ignored the red flags. You were aggressive with Jermaine Burton, but you took a risk with Jermaine Burton. You ignored the red flags. That came back and cost you last year. Possibly cost you moving forward because he was supposed to be a potential option that if he hit, maybe the Bengals don't sign T. Higgins. Maybe they use that $30 million and they distribute it into other key position groups. Burton, I think, is one reason why the Bengals ended up doing that. I think Joe Burrow really wanted T, no doubt about it. He made it clear. I think the Bengals had to do it because they had no other option because Burton completely fell flat and the red flags ended up costing them. You think of Eric All last year. The big red flag on him was injury history. And sure enough, not only did he miss the majority of last season, he's pretty much out for this season coming up. And then you take a guy with more, I hate to call him red flags, but question mark. He checks off every box. All the measurables are there, talking, of course, about Stewart. But there's no production there. I get why, and Jake, this is what I want to ask you, because you've talked, of course, about the fact that this team, you want the Bengals to continue to be aggressive. But at what point, how aggressive, is this aggressive or is this too big of a risk? At what point, where is that line for the Bengals, who you want them to be aggressive, but you don't want them to be reckless? Was this a reckless decision for a team that desperately needs to hit in this draft?
I think it certainly could be. And we talked about it a little bit before the show, and I think there's really two options for Shemar Stewart and how his career in Cincinnati plays out. I don't see any way that he turns into Sam Hubbard or Joseph Osai or, one of these guys where their contract runs up after their rookie year and we're like, well, he's a pretty good player. Are we going to pick up that fifth-year option? I don't know. Shemar Stewart, we're either going to be sitting here in 2-3 years saying, how the hell did he make it to 17? Or the people that are upset last night are going to be doing the best victory lap of all time. Those are the two options. Either he's the 4.5 sack guy from Texas A&M that can't finish at the quarterback, or he's going to live up to the 10.0 RAS score and one of the most, freak athletes we've ever seen at the Combine. I think those are the two options. He's not just going to scratch success in the NFL. He's either going to be an unmitigated bust or in contention for Defensive Player of the Year type stuff. And I think that's a tough place for Bengals fans to be because of the lack of faith that we have in this coaching staff to develop players. And I think a big thing Bengals fans are holding on to now is Lou Anarumo was defensive coordinator of this team for the second longest tenure of any defensive coordinator in the history of this franchise behind Dick LeBeau. So we're used to him running this organization and how everything goes. We brought in Al Golden, and one of the main reasons was how he's going to handle young talent, how he's going to develop these guys. If he's able to make Shemar Stewart work, then it's certainly the highest ceiling of anyone at a position of need there at 17. It's a no-brainer pick if you can make him work. And if you think Al Golden can make Shemar Stewart work, a player with a very similar draft profile, which a lot of Bengals fans have been saying as a negative, but Myles Murphy. If he can make both of those guys work, how much better is this Bengals defensive line than what we're talking about going into next season? It certainly makes Trey Hendrickson more expendable. So I'm going to, reserve my negativity. I tried to stay as positive as I could last night. I stayed up pretty late watching highlights. The frustration of this pick is, when you make a pick of a guy in a draft that you're not, thrilled about, what does every fan usually do? You run to YouTube, look up the highlights. Shemar Stewart has 4.5 sacks. I saw him all in about 5 minutes. But he led Texas A&M in pressures last year, and I know that's not sacks, that's not bringing the quarterback down. That does mean something. It also means something that Walter Nolan transferred from Texas A&M to Ole Miss, had a way more productive season. Nick Scorton transferred from Purdue after being first team All Big Ten to Texas A&M, had his least productive season of his NFL or of his collegiate career before going to the draft this year. So Texas A&M's defense could potentially be at fault here for his lack of production with getting close to the quarterback in a lot of those slots. It's frustrating because guys like James Pierce, Mike Green were on the board, but those guys have character concerns. And what was the big thing that we said about those character concerns? You only take that player if the meetings go and you feel comfortable with them. If they met with James Pierce and Mike Green and didn't feel comfortable about those character concerns, I don't want to take him over Shemar Stewart just because they had better production. If you don't think those two guys can stay on the field, then certainly take Shemar Stewart and roll the dice. The frustration really comes from the board laying how a lot of Bengals fans prayed it was going to lay, and then going in a direction that no one wanted them to go. I think that's where a lot of frustration goes. I think a lot of the edge rushers in this class are going to be great. If Shemar Stewart lives up to his potential, he'll be the best or the second best one behind Abdul Carter.
Who would you have sorry, Elliot, real quick. Who would you have because the guy Nolan came off the board the pick before. If Nolan's available, they're 95% sure that's where they're going, right? So
almost 100%.
Nolan's off the board. You're not a big fan of the pick. You're willing to give it a shot, obviously, but who is it that, damn it, they picked him. I wish they would have gone this route. Who is that name that you would have rather them taken with Nolan off the board then?
I'm going to reserve my official answer until week 1 because if
Week
Jihad,
one?
if Jihad Campbell has a helmet and shoulder pads on week 1, that
enough.
should have been the pick.
Okay.
If he's not healthy for week 1, like a lot of people suggest, then the Bengals really can't take him. The Eagles have that luxury by having that many stars on their defense. But if he plays week 1, I'm going to be very frustrated with passing on him because that's the only reason I could think that he's not a perfect fit at 17 for the Bengals.
Well, are you concerned at least a little bit that after the pick it was, quote, I never talked to the Bengals, I didn't talk to them, doesn't remember any communication with the Bengals. So this seems to be a shock to him. It's just shock to the fan base, even though I think there were some people like Jacob who called it a month ago that if he was available,
It's a very Bengals pick.
It's a Bengals pick, but are you? I mean, how much more concerned are you that it seems like it almost seems like the Bengals weren't even interested?
Yeah.
Based on the lack of communication with this guy.
Officially, no top 30 meeting. He said he doesn't remember if they met at the combine. So fingers crossed that they didn't, and it wasn't just the most unmemorable meeting that he's ever had. Yeah, he was shocked, and I think most of us were as well. The Bengals have lived in those meetings for the last 4 or 5 years, especially during the Zach Taylor tenure. They live with 5-star prospects from Power 5 schools, and they live with those top 30 meetings. This is certainly a big shock. I think that's why he fell down a lot of our projections for the Bengals as we got closer to the draft, because he didn't have that meeting. Obviously, they didn't value that. Maybe they spent that time on some of those guys that had more of the off-the-field concerns. If they felt comfortable with Shemar Stewart, this is what I keep coming back to. If they felt comfortable with Shemar Stewart, then it's the right pick. The reason why we're all so against it is because we're uncomfortable with him. And if they take him at 17 without meeting with him, they have to think he's all but a sure thing. So, yes, that's a negative in terms of if it doesn't work, that's going to be very easy to look back on and say, stupid Bengals front office. If it does work, maybe they didn't waste their time with a guy that they were so sure on.
Some of the stats from Goodberry. Goodberry tweeted this out yesterday. I thought this was interesting. Shemar Stewart missed 26.9% of his tackles in college. His missed tackle rate is lower than 98.5% of all defensive end prospects we've charted. His tackle for loss rate is in the 13th percentile. His run stop rate in the bottom 1 percentile. His PFF run defense grade puts him at the 45th percentile. My issue with this pick is that it feels like we're taking gambles.
Oh yeah.
We got set answers out there. We've got the answer to the test. And the Bengals are closing their eyes and throwing darts. We have an uncertain situation with Trey Hendrickson. Nobody knows if Trey Hendrickson's going to suit up for the Bengals week 1. Nobody knows, even if he suits up for the Bengals week 1, is he going to have the positive attitude or the want to perform for the Bengals now that all of this has happened this offseason. You know, there's a lot of uncertainty there. So my question for the Bengals would be, why would you match uncertainty with uncertainty? That's the part I don't get. Because there were set answers there, excuse me, there were set answers on the board that were taken immediately after, where it's like, why didn't you take him? Why didn't we go James Pierce? Why didn't we go all these guys? And maybe some of it's character concerns, maybe some of it's, you know, you saw the Jermaine Burton situation last year, and they said, you know what? Anybody with a character concern, we're out. No matter what. No matter how little, no matter how inconvenient it might be for us when this pick comes around, if I heard anything bad about him at all, if somebody had a bad tweet about him one time, we're not drafting him. If that's the case, and maybe maybe they're right for it, because I think that we had discourse on this show where it's, should you take that? Should you take that risk? It's been Jacob's opinion. I think I tend to agree with him that the character concerns, unfortunately, though might be morally not the best, you know, you're drafting him to play football for your team. So you're drafting a talent. And that's what I think it outweighs anything else. So if this was a character concern pick where it's like the Bengals are afraid to take anybody else who's done something maybe possibly wrong or could do something wrong or maybe will be a problem in the locker room, then that's one thing. But it feels to me like this was just like they were trying to go safe with it. And by going with the safe pick, by going with the most athletic guy in the draft, you took the biggest gamble of them all. Yeah. And that's the part that confuses me. I don't get it.
This pick feels a lot like, looking at the draft board and how it played out last night in real time even, it feels a lot like Billy Price. And I'm not saying Shemar Stewart's going to turn into Billy Price, but I'm talking about how we ended up there.
Yeah.
And it's the guy that everyone mocked to Cincinnati, the guy that was the perfect fit to Cincinnati going right before them. And obviously then it was Frank Ragnow, the center that's been the Lions center for going on a decade now, an all-pro guy every single year. No doubt about it, probably going to be in Canton one day. And this year, we don't know what he's going to become, but certainly Walter Nolan was that guy in this draft class, the perfect pick, the ideal pick for the Cincinnati Bengals. And he goes one pick before at 16 to the Cardinals. If the Bengals didn't have James Pierce or Mike Green on their draft board, I'm not so confident I disagree with this pick. I think you can certainly make an argument for Shemar Stewart over Derek Harmon. Derek Harmon had 1 year of production on the interior for Oregon. He's not the best pass rusher. So are you really drafting another guy that you're hoping to develop as a pass rusher who's a stout run defender in the middle? You have Chris Jenkins, who I believe in. You have McKinley Jackson, who they believe in. Maybe that works. I've seen a lot of people talking about the DB room. I wouldn't have went with Malachi Starks or Nicky Manwari there. Obviously, Manwari fell out of the first round. Starks goes to the Ravens, so I'm sure he'll be an all-pro caliber player, but I'm not sure that's the direction I would have went with the Cincinnati Bengals, especially with the depth at defensive back in this class. So with the players that went after the Bengals and the players on the board, are there frustrations? Sure, but there's a lot of question marks about the guys that are those quote-unquote sure things. And those question marks don't relate to them as football players, which make it very, very frustrating and sometimes confusing to debate, because Shemar Stewart's questions all come on the field, which is a tough pill to swallow sometimes. But he's still a freak. And if you go watch his tape, we shared some of it last night on Chatterbox Bengals, he wreaks havoc on offenses. He's in the backfield all the time. He's getting around blockers. He's just not finishing at the quarterback. And if you're able to teach that, maybe you have a really, really dominant edge rusher in the middle of the first round.
Justin Kinder, Jacob Tissett, Elliot Rearing. I want to pick up with more reaction to, of course, the Bengals' number 17 selection last night. Of course, going with Shemar Stewart. Checks off every box from, again, all the measurables, everything else. But it all just comes down to production, and not just his production in college, but what will his production be with the Bengals? That's the big question mark at this point. We're allowed to share the clips from the press conference last night, right? Yeah, that's what I thought. So when we come back, we'll have Al Golden in his response to the Bengals and their pick last night, as well as, of course, Zach Taylor. And we might get more into the Cardinals' big pick of Emeka Egbuka later on, too. Maybe. I'm still getting people messaging me about how dumb that was. So we'll be right back. More Off the Bench when we come back. All right, and we are back off the bench. We are brought to you by UDF. Justin Kinner, Jacob Tissett, Elliot Rearer, and Casey McAllister will be back with us next week. But we appreciate everyone who has started your day with us today on Chatterbox Sports on YouTube and tuning in and hanging out with us. Everyone it felt like it was a very split down the middle take on Shemar Stewart last night. So everyone's fired up about it, but we appreciate that you guys are tuning in and hanging out with us as we react to it as well. If you could do us a favor, give the stream the old thumbs up, give it the old like. That helps us grow the show. The algorithm helps push it out more. But we do appreciate the big group of people that are tuning in and starting their day with us here today. So we do appreciate that. Give the stream a like nonetheless. All right, so we've all obviously given our take on this. I think Elliot and I kept saying, they take too many risks. I thought they took a lot of risks in last year's draft. You said a gamble, that they gambled with this pick right here. Obviously, when you gamble, though, there is a chance to win. So, we'll see if the Bengals win with this gamble that they took with Stewart, taking him number 17 overall last night. But you're right, Elliot, it's one of those where you know what you need, you know what you need to do to put a contender out on that field. And I think not knowing who this Bengals team is, we talked about it earlier in the week. We all feel very confident that this is you have a chance to contend for a Super Bowl just because of the big three. But what has held this team back the last couple of seasons, yes, injuries 2 years ago for Burrow, obviously. But obviously the defense has not done this team any favors. So we knew defense was going to be a high priority that they needed to address, whether it be through free agency or the draft. Free agency was light, of course, so that put even more pressure on this draft. You go defense in the first round, but again, production is something that Stewart lacked in college. But that was asked. Obviously that was a lot of questions thrown the way of Zach Taylor and Al Golden, the new defensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals. Here's a quick clip of both head coach Zach Taylor and Al Golden responding to those questions after the pick selection last night.
Overall athleticism, his effort, his play style, his relentlessness. I mean, if there's a word you want to define our defense with, you want 11 guys that are relentless on all snaps, and I think Shemar fits that to a T.
As much production as you like to see versus the projection, how much is that something that you try to balance?
We anticipate getting a lot of production out of him. I've got great faith in our coaches that, there was a lot of near production obviously there as you watch all the clips with him. But again, we see a tremendous football player who's going to come in and help us and be really productive for us.
Well, I think they're elite, right? Again, not just, the 40 and the vertical and that kind of thing, but just how explosive he is, how powerful he is at the point of attack, his ability to anchor down and set it. And he gives you versatility. I mean, he could play a 9, he could play a 6, he could play a 5. He can go ahead and play a 4i if you want to move him down. So he gives you a chess piece that's really hard to find as a defensive end.
And again, that was Zach Taylor, head coach for the Bengals, and Al Golden, new defensive coordinator, answering questions following the selection. There's one line I know Jacob was annoyed with. It was the line of near production. The one thing that Zach said, too, is, obviously he wreaks havoc. He does wreak havoc. He does get into the backfield. He does get there. But he doesn't seem to close it out. And that's really what you're looking for when it comes to, you don't want to almost get to Lamar Jackson. You don't want to have an arm on Lamar Jackson. You want to bring Lamar Jackson down. You don't want to almost get to Joe Flacco. I mean, you need to bring Joe Flacco down. You don't want to, whatever mess quarterback situation's happening in Pittsburgh, you don't want to almost get to Mason Rudolph. You want to bring Mason Rudolph down. I understand what Zach is saying, and I don't know what else he's supposed to say, but as Jacob's going to tell you, not a big fan of the near production line that Zach Taylor mentioned.
You just can't say it, right? You just can't say those words right
Correct.
After the pick gets made of a guy that had no production in college. But I do think it's funny, and there's some people in the chat now. A lot of people are likening it to, the average 9 to 5. People saying, "Hey, I'm going to go to my boss and say I almost made that sale," or "I'm going to go."
That's what I said last time.
Right?
Yeah.
And, hey, I almost made it in to host the show this morning. Trace, how does that go over? Obviously, that's not the same as a quarterback pressure versus a sack, right? We all know that.
I almost closed the sale.
Quarterback pressures are a big deal and drastically impact the game. They're a stat that's kept for a reason, and if you're getting a lot of them, it's reasonable to suggest that at some point down the road as you mature and get older and have more time under your belt, you're going to convert more of those to sacks. So is it what you want to hear out of a guy picked in the first round? No, it's probably an awesome quote about a guy picked in the third or fourth round, but that's where we're at right now, and that's the reality of Shemar Stewart is it's a ceiling pick, and you're gambling pretty heavily on what he can become, and you're optimistic as Bengals fans, or at least you should be optimistic as Bengals fans that he can scratch that ceiling, because his ceiling is Myles Garrett, who is a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year, first ballot Hall of Famer, which means there's plenty of rungs below that he can land on and still be one of the best edge rushers we've ever had in Cincinnati.
Yeah.
So there is a long list of places that Shemar Stewart could end up. I think more than less of them are really a good player for a long time. Maybe he isn't, pick 17, and that's not the best thing, but I think he'll be a productive player in terms of, being able to set that edge, even if he doesn't get to that double-digit sack number. But I think he'll have more production maybe this year as a rookie for Cincinnati than he did through all 3 years at Texas A&M.
We'll never know, and it would just be speculation, but based on what he said, based on the Bengals not really having, a ton of communication with him, it feels to me like this wasn't the pick the Bengals were hoping for. That at least what it feels like to me. It's all speculation, just my opinion here. And if that's the case, why would you not trade it back? And maybe I.
What do you need to trade back?
What do you
team
need?
that wants to trade up?
Yeah. I guess that's. I guess that's a fair point.
Do you think Shemar Stewart's a worse pick than the Bengals trading out of the first round?
My issue is he has 4.5 sacks.
I'm saying out of the first round, because I don't think there's a trade back option for the Bengals that incorporates James Pierce or Mike Green or Derek Harmon in the mid-20s. Think about the teams that traded up. The Giants out of the third round.
Yeah.
Like, these teams that were trading up, we would be picking in the 40s probably in
Yeah.
the second round. And if that's something that Bengals fans would prefer to have those extra draft picks, then we can have that conversation. But I do not think there was an opportunity for the Bengals to pick in the 20s and trade back from 17. I just don't think it presented itself. So we have to remember that as well, as there has to be two sides of that phone call if you're going to make a trade in the draft.
And I do think Bengals fans, and maybe any fan base would be doing it right now, there is the overreaction, right? There is the, I know what the numbers say, and obviously those certainly aren't good, a lot of near production. But it is one thing where you're hyper-focused on this kid. It's not who any Bengals fans wanted.
Yeah.
And that makes up a lot of it. He's an athletic freak. The Bengals drafted an athletic freak last draft in the first round. And I would say it worked out. I'd venture to say it worked out. There was concerns there too. Could he stay healthy? Didn't play a lot of games in his career. This guy, again, what could he be? We don't know yet. And maybe that's part of the reason you take him. Maybe you like to take the guy with the highest upside possible. You don't really see the perfect RAS score guys almost ever.
Right.
So why not take the gamble? It's a shame Casey's not here to defend RAS scores today, because I would have peppered him.
This would have been his day.
This would have been his day. But he's got a perfect RAS score. We know what he could be. We've got a new defensive coordinator. And but my whole concern is there's just so many question marks.
Absolutely.
There's too many. With the uncertainty with Trey Hendrickson, the uncertainty with Shemar, there's uncertainty everywhere on this defense, and that's why I don't get the pick. If Trey Hendrickson was locked in and if he was ready to roll, this would almost make at least a little bit more sense to me. It would be more pressure to the quarterback, more opportunity for Trey to finish up and get sacks. But we don't know what Trey's going to do yet. And my question to you, as somebody who's not a big defensive side of the football kind of guy, when you talk about pressures, and obviously sack is how you close the deal. It's the number one metric. But pressures are important as well. I mean,
immensely.
Getting pressured on the quarterback, putting pressure on that line, it does matter. So, you're getting some value here with a guy that's incredibly strong. I think he's going to be good. I don't know. I don't want to. I know everybody was calling him. Who was the draft pick 2 years ago for the Bengals defensively? Myles Murphy. So I think that was that 2 years ago or was that last year? There was a lot of Bengals fans, calling him Myles Murphy 2.0. I don't know if it's going to be Myles Murphy 2.0. But I think there's room to have a little bit of optimism, more than what we're seeing right now.
I do think Myles Murphy's a little bit of a stretch.
Yeah.
Certainly Myles Garrett's a stretch in the positive direction. Shemar Stewart is a better prospect than Myles Murphy was coming out. Myles Murphy had a lower pass rush win rate than Shemar Stewart coming out, so we can have the debate if the Bengals just made two of the worst edge picks of all time. Maybe that's something we'll talk about in a few years, but Shemar Stewart is a better prospect than Myles Murphy by a fairly significant margin.
Yeah.
So I think there is some optimism to be had. I really do.
Now, you mentioned a little bit ago too, like I saw someone in the chat and it kind of moved down, so I can't find it. But this clearly, I forgot who it was, but said that by drafting this individual, it means that okay, yeah, for sure they're keeping Hendrickson. Could this be because they could have gone different routes? They could have gone Jihad. They could have gone him at 17. They could have gone Will Johnson. They could have gone a lot of different routes at 17 technically, but they chose to go this route. They chose to take a project on, not really a project, but you know what I mean. They a question mark, if you will. Did they take him to add to Trey Hendrickson, or did they take him because this might be Trey Hendrickson's replacement? Because it feels like they could have traded back, as you brought up earlier, or they could have gone for a more for sure thing at a different position, and they chose to go this route. Was this forced because they don't know the future of Trey Hendrickson, or was it forced because they do know the future of Trey Hendrickson?
I think this is certainly a Trey Hendrickson replacement.
You think so?
There's no way around that. You're taking edge rush because you don't have confidence in Trey Hendrickson being here next year. I don't think it has anything to do with whether or not he'll be here this year. I don't think this pick was made to speed up the trade process or anything along those lines. I do think this pick was made very similar to how Dax Hill was made for Jesse Bates and how Jermaine Burton was probably made last year for T. Higgins and how, all these guys have been picked 1 year in advance. And I think that's what it is here with Shemar Stewart as well. You're hoping that, hey, as the second defensive end this year, he can be a great piece next to Trey Hendrickson. And then when Trey Hendrickson goes our separate ways next offseason, bang, Shemar Stewart's going to hit the ground running and be our dominant edge one. I think that is the Bengals' plan. Would they like to get Trey Hendrickson worked out? Maybe. Does something happen before then? Possibly. But I think their plan this year is to have one last run with Trey Hendrickson, like we've said, on the show for a couple weeks, months now, and see where it goes with Shemar Stewart on the opposite side. I think that's where they're at. But for the first time in a long time, late last night after the first round, we got some Trey Hendrickson trade news. And there's some seemingly concrete offers coming in for Trey Hendrickson. And obviously we don't know whether the Bengals will move them. We also don't even know if these offers are actually on the table. It's just the first substantial rumors we've heard regarding Trey Hendrickson in some time. Right after the draft, Stu Jackson, the senior sports writer for the Rams, the official team writer, asked Sean McVay about having 2 first-round picks after the trade with the Falcons in the 2026 draft after going 7 years now in between first-rounders. Sean McVay's response, for now. One of those 2 2026 first-rounders is seemingly on the table, if not both of them. It was also reported by various sources that the Rams could potentially have 2 packages prepared to send the Bengals' way. One centered around a 2026 first-rounder. We don't know whether that would be the Rams' own pick or the Falcons' pick. Certainly would be much better for us to get the Falcons' pick than the Rams' pick. The other package, however, is centered around pick 46. Their pick in the second round, 3 slots ahead of the Bengals. And I think, whether these offers are true or not, whether they're on the table for the Bengals, I think it's important to discuss this with Trey Hendrickson because I think that's probably what you're debating right now in the facility. Is it worth it to have 1 year of production with Trey Hendrickson on this team and go for a run and try to win a Super Bowl? Or would you rather have another pick in this draft? Or would you have a better pick in next year's draft? Which route would you go out of those 3 with Trey Hendrickson? I think the risk on Shemar Stewart brings playing him out this year into play.
Yeah, I certainly think it does. And I don't know the set rationale for what the Bengals did here. My only pushback is there is no set, answer for him yet. You can talk about the trades, and certainly you can try to trade him during this period, and because teams are desperate and teams want Trey Hendrickson. Any team would want Trey Hendrickson. But I think if you paired Trey Hendrickson with Shemar, I think that obviously would be the Bengals' preferred method for this season alone. I don't know if you can replace Trey Hendrickson with Shemar Stewart, a guy who doesn't have a ton of sacks. You're trying to replace. It's like the Moneyball scene. You're trying to replace 15 sacks with 4.5 sacks. It's not going to work. It's going to have to be a different method.
But can the worst defense in football replace the edge rusher with a safety and Shemar Stewart and be better overall?
Yeah, I don't know, and I don't trust. I don't know if I trust the Bengals as a whole to do that. Maybe I would trust another franchise if we were talking about a different franchise. But the Bengals specifically, I don't know. I don't have that answer, and I would probably venture to say maybe. I would take a shot, I guess.
A lot of the frustration around the Shemar Stewart pick, it felt like was centered around people didn't feel like it's a win now move. And having Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase and obviously all the pieces we have offensively, everyone in this city feels like this team should be trying to win now. I feel like trading Trey Hendrickson for a first-round pick or letting him play this year and walking for free is not focused on winning now. That's my only worry. I think the win now move is trading him for a draft pick that you have controlled for multiple years. You can use in this draft in a board that is falling down to a place where there's really good players on this board. If you have 46 and 49, maybe you don't even go defense. Maybe that's Tate Ratledge and Wyatt Milam, and bang, you have the best offensive line in front of Joe Burrow that he's ever had. I don't know. I think at the end of the day, if a contract situation has sailed with Trey Hendrickson, you have to do your best to trade him today. Get into the second round, get above pick 49, and make a pick that's going to help this team. And if that's not possible, wait till the end of today, wait for someone that missed out on the edge rushers that are still available, and trade him for a first round next year. I would not play Trey Hendrickson out on this contract. I don't think it's the best idea. I don't think he's the difference between this team being a Super Bowl contender and not.
I agree with that.
I think this team getting more assets, because they're not the best drafters, you get more at-bats, I think you can have a better chance of getting more better players.
I just don't know. I think you're taking, and they've already done it, so there's no reason to even discuss whether or not it's going to happen. But you're asking somebody to replace Trey Hendrickson right now, or maybe two guys if you trade Trey Hendrickson
right.
to replace him, and there's just so much uncertainty, and I don't know if the Bengals are built to withstand that. Because I agree with Jacob in the fact that Trey Hendrickson's not the difference of the Bengals, getting to an AFC championship game. That's solely on our offense, and we knew that coming into this draft. That's why you paid Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. That's why those deals were done, because the offense has to score 35 a game. We're hoping the defense improves, but I am a little bit scared to take away Trey Hendrickson.
Yeah, and that's fair.
For questions everywhere, and that's what I don't know. I don't know the answer. I wish I knew more about what the Bengals can do here, but as of right now, I don't think this pick's as bad as everybody's saying. But I also can understand that with when you lose your 15 sack edge rusher and you draft a guy who notoriously doesn't sack anybody.
Right.
And then we're talking about trading Trey Hendrickson for another guy who knows what the Bengals will do. It's probably another guy they haven't had a conversation with, and it has a 9.7 RAS score. It's just a lot, and I don't know. I wish I had an answer for that.
Well, I think we can all agree that the worst case scenario for the Bengals is to bring Trey Hendrickson back this year and him go out there and get like 9 sacks.
I agree. Yeah.
Like that is certainly the worst case scenario.
So when you brought up, and I forgot about that too, when he brought up that he never even talked to the Bengals during the pre-draft process, that's why I asked, when you look at the fact that the Rams traded their pick, there's some smoke over there where the Rams could potentially be trying to package something together to go get Trey Hendrickson. So all of a sudden the Rams are positioning themselves to put a package together, and then the Bengals take a player that they didn't even talk to during the pre-draft process. That's what makes me feel like maybe there is something there. But either way, again, the Bengals have the smallest, scouting department in football, so it's strange that they would take a player that they didn't even talk to throughout the process. Is it the wrong decision? I don't know. It's just an odd one. Either way. Again, the second and third round picks up later on tonight. I think that the pick for the Bengals in the first round, we're questioning it because it's the only pick that they made last night. But I think this pick will be judged more based on the draft as a whole. What do they get with him? What do they add with the other 5 picks? Do they acquire more picks and trade back with any of these? We'll find out. But we'll step away for a few. There's a couple mock drafts out there for, as far as the second and third round. We'll take a look at who Field Yates has the Bengals taking in the second round later on tonight. And then we'll get your guys' takes on who you think that they should take. So we'll be right back. More Off the Bench next. All right, Shemar Stewart has everybody talking today. Obviously, that was the Bengals' first-round pick at number 17. Everybody wanted Walter Nolan, who ended up out of Ole Miss, who went in the pick right before. I mean, it's one thing if
They
he
got a
would have
Mecca
taken...
and Walter Nolan. What a draft for the Cardinals, man.
Dude, you know he didn't go there, right?
No, really? Wow.
Dude, can you believe this guy?
Can't believe it.
Did you even watch the draft, dude? Like, what were you doing last night? No, obviously, it's not just that you didn't get the main guy you wanted. It's the fact that he got selected in the pick right before you. So that stings a little bit. But obviously, Shemar Stewart has everybody talking, a polarizing pick, if you will, a gamble, as Elliot said earlier. They gambled with this, but the payout, I mean, if he is Myles Garrett, I mean, kudos. That sucks for me and a lot of fan bases of any team outside of the Bengals fan base, of course. But good for the Bengals if that's the case. But until you guys see it, it's just gonna be a big question mark. But I do think that this pick will be very, very solid, depending on also what you get behind it. How aggressive do you think that the Bengals take more question marks like they did last year, where they took chances on a lot of guys? They ignored some of the red flags and said, forget it. Eric All is just a simple all-out talent.
Yeah.
We're going to ignore the injury concerns. Jermaine Burton is just a stupid talent. Like, we don't care about the red flags and the on- and off-field concerns. That backfired on them last year. They're off to a gambling start already with this draft. Do you anticipate them continuing that mindset in the upcoming picks?
I hope so. I hope so.
Hope so?
Absolutely,
Okay.
I hope so. Because I don't necessarily put Shemar Stewart in that. There's two different buckets for gambles.
Yeah, I didn't mean to
I understand.
I
understand exactly what you meant, but think about what we're just talking about here and what we talked about last night. What did we want the Bengals to do at 17? Take those gambles. Mike Green, James Pierce, the players that everyone in our chat are labeling those sure things that we wanted the Bengals to take over Shemar Stewart, those are the guys that are those off-the-field gambles. Those are the Jermaine Burton-esque prospects.
What's a better gamble? What's a better hope? I hope they produce, or I hope they don't get in trouble. Or I think I would. I'm
there's
three different ones.
much more comfortable in betting on hoping they can produce, or you should fire your coaching staff.
Fair enough. That's what they're paid to do.
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
You brought in Al Golden to develop young players. That's why you went out and got a college defensive coordinator for a team that's trying to win a Super Bowl right now. We said, we're paying Joe, we're paying Jamar, we're paying T, we're paying Orlando, we're going to pay Amarius Mims in a few years, we're just re-signed Gesicki. We can't put money into this defense. We can't. It's not feasible. So you hire a guy from college who can evaluate talent and can get them up to a level where you're confident with them playing. And the Bengals took a guy that they're confident will be available, and they think Al Golden can get up to speed. All these quote-unquote sure things are bigger question marks in terms of will they play football than Shemar Stewart. Mike Green might be in jail in 3 months. We don't know how that's going to go. There's some legitimate off-the-field concerns with these guys that are massive question marks with these prospects, which is why we saw them fall. It's not like Mike Green and James Pierce went bang, bang, 18-19. We all play fantasy football. We know how it goes when you take somebody and then immediately 1 second goes off the next pick. You feel so stupid. That wasn't the case for the Bengals. James Pierce fell all the way to 27. Mike Green's still on the board. These weren't unanimous first-round picks by these NFL teams. So the fact that the Bengals, went away from that direction, I don't think it's the worst move, but in the second, third, fourth round, the Bengals need guys that are going to come in and be meaningful players on this team, and the way you do that is you don't draft perfect profiles. Tate Ratledge, the guard from Georgia, has been mocked to the Bengals in the third round. I would love to take him at 49. Why is he going in the third round? Because he's going to be 25 by the time the playoffs start this year. A lot of people say he's the best he's ever going to be in his career right now. Good thing I'm trying to win a Super Bowl this year.
Yeah.
So why does that matter for the Bengals? Let's get the best guard we have. The Bengals are going to have to get outside of their comfortability with a lot of these things. They're not going to be able to just draft great athletes. They're going to have to draft guys that have good production profiles, and you're going to have to take risks on guys that should have went higher if they were perfect prospects. That's how you get studs. That's how the Eagles do this every year. That's how the Chiefs continue to reload. That's how the Ravens have great drafts after great drafts. You draft studs, and you rely on the people that you've hired in your facility to make those guys into NFL players, to make them into NFL players. And if the Bengals don't believe in Zach Taylor and Al Golden to do that with their draft picks, then Zach Taylor and Al Golden shouldn't be NFL coaches.
Do you think that the snap count for Shemar this year is going to be as high as possible? Like, do you think that's what he's just going to come in immediately and play as much as possible, or do you think if Trey Hendrickson's here, it's going to be like, all right, let's learn a little bit and then we'll go in?
I would be shocked if Shemar Stewart's not the second edge rusher on this team. I think we'll probably see more of Osai and Miles Murphy than we did of them when Sam Hubbard was in that role, if that makes sense. But I firmly believe that Shemar Stewart's going to be your starting edge rusher, because if he's not getting the sacks, he's still 6'7", 270 pounds, and he still had 35 pressures last year. And he can still bump inside on different packages. That's what Al Golden highlighted last night, and I think something a lot of people are glossing over. He's a great athlete. We're hoping he's going to be an edge defender, absolutely. He's also this giant freak of a human being in terms of get off the bus size. You don't have to make as many drastic subs when you go to different formulas, right? Different alignments on the defensive line. You can bump him down and have Osai on the outside with Trey Hendrickson. You can use all four of those speed rushers in the middle. I think he gives the Bengals a lot of versatility. I think they hung their hat last night on, we're getting a player that has no comp in this draft class. We're getting a player that has a ceiling unlike really anyone else in this draft class. We'll see what happens. I see people in the chat saying his ceiling's not Myles Garrett. I'm not saying he's going to be Myles Garrett, but that is what his ceiling is.
That's the only player
he
that he's
tested
built
that
like.
well.
Yeah.
So whether he reaches that ceiling or not, we can have that debate. And certainly I would venture to say he's not going to be Myles Garrett, but that is his ceiling. That's the only representation we have of these testing numbers playing in the NFL, and it's Myles Garrett. So shoot for the moon, land amongst the stars. If Shemar Stewart can be close to Myles Garrett, it was a hell of a pick.
And to answer your question, I do think that having a gamble on somebody that may or may not play football is different than having a gamble on somebody who plays football and whether or not they're going to elevate their game. I think you would rather have the guy that's for sure a set commodity that's going to be there rather than have a guy that who knows what could take him off the board, who knows what could happen in this offseason or any offseason or during the regular season. Who knows when that hammer drops, and you just have to sit there and take it. Unlike if you have Shemar, he's going to be playing. If he doesn't play up to his standards, if he's not a good player, then all right, we know that after a year, but at least he's there. Don't play with there's certainly worse gambles to take, and I do think Mike Green is a worse gamble.
We have a super chat here from No Name, $10 super chat. Mike Potts is the college director of scouting, and we keep missing on picks, but blame the coaches. Why? Too many holes. We have drafted poorly because our college scouting, the Burrow era, is slipping by. Certainly frustrating for sure to miss on this many draft picks in the Joe Burrow era. However, I think when every single one of your draft picks aren't developing, you have to start looking at the coaching staff. Dax Hill was a consensus top 20 pick. Miles Murphy was, not supposed to be there when the Bengals picked. Shemar Stewart was mocked as high as 11 to the San Francisco 49ers, and Marius Mims was a great piece to luck into, and he doesn't really fit in this group because he looked great or last year, I should say. Yeah, it's frustrating for the Bengals in the lack of scouting because we think that's an easy thing to blame, but at some point, one of these guys are going to work, and it's on the coaching staff for not making it work. To talk about that lack of scouting, 4 years in a row now, and 5 of the last 7 for the Cincinnati Bengals in the first round, they've drafted a 21-year-old 5-star high school recruit from a big-time program. That tells me they're not watching a ton of film. Now, maybe, that's the film that's most readily available, certainly have the most of it, and you get more Power 5 guys drafted that high than ever before. But you got to go back a long, long way to Margus Hunt in 2013 for the last time the Bengals took someone outside the Power 5 in the first or second round. And you can't convince me that there hasn't been a group of 5 player that's the best player available at one of those slots in the last 12 years. So I do blame Bengals scouting to a degree. However, I do think part of this development falls on the coach's shoulders as well.
So second round, second and third round begins tonight. Obviously, the Bengals, their next pick is at 49. Where do they go from here? Do you go, because you took a gamble, if you will, with your first-round pick, do you play it a little bit more safe? I mean, what are names that you expect to kind of be there at 49? Field Yates with ESPN has the Bengals going with the cornerback from Florida State, and I'll probably mispronounce his name, but Azariah Thomas.
I was going to say he goes by AZ, so I could have saved you there.
Damn it. Oh, well. AZ, as they call him on the street. So AZ Thomas, cornerback, Florida State. But that's who some of the mocks have the Bengals going at 49. They go in defensive back. Where do you think they're going with their 49th, with the second-round pick?
I would adore the idea of defensive back. I think this board is setting itself up perfectly to have some really, really great players there at DB for the Cincinnati Bengals, whether that's corner or safety. I think that would be a great route to go. I think a lot of people are putting their finger on offensive line, addressing that guard need here, because if you're going to double dip at guard in this draft, like a lot of people want the Bengals to, you have to really take one at 49. to make it make sense. If not, you're looking at 81, hoping someone falls, and then taking a late round prospect, obviously in day 3. But talking about the corners, Will Johnson was a player who was the consensus corner 1 for the majority of the college football season. Obviously, that wasn't the case as we got closer to the draft. Travis Hunter took a stranglehold of that spot, but he's still on the board here in the second round. Where I deviate from a lot of Bengals fans on Will Johnson, I know a lot of people wanted him at 17 last night, a lot of shock that he's still there with the Browns, not yet on the clock, but will be on the clock soon to start the second round today. There's a lot of concern. It's not about him holding out at the end of the season, sitting out at the end of the season when Michigan was eliminated. It's not about his production dropping off in this year compared to 2023. They're worried about whether or not his leg's is going to heal from this injury this season. So that's a completely different realm for me than gambling on character concerns or a lack of production. That's something I'm completely uncomfortable with. So I wouldn't consider taking him even if he fell down to 49. That's just not a move that I would like the Bengals to make. I love Siobhan Revel from East Carolina, the corner. It was one of the most productive corners in all of college football before his injury over the last 3 years. Trey Amos, the Alabama transfer from Ole Miss. Ole Miss had a really fun defense last year. We talked about Princely Umanmielen as a potential second-round pick before the Bengals went edge in the first round. They're not going to double down at edge. But if they did double down on the trenches, I think it would make a lot of sense to go defensive line. You have Darius Alexander from Toledo on the interior, TJ Sanders, who's probably the second best pass rushing D lineman behind Walter Nolan in this class. And then at safety, there's guys that we've talked about a lot potentially being linked to the Bengals. Xavier Watts from Notre Dame, Al Golden's captain. You have Kevin Winston, we talked about with Jay Paterno, Penn State safety who missed most of last year with an injury. Andrew Makuba, the safety from Texas, probably more of a third-round pick, but that is tonight as well. I think there's a lot of options for the Bengals, and quite honestly, I think it's setting up to be about as frustrating as it was last night, because as we went through the top 10, top 12, that board was perfect for the Bengals. And then Walter Nolan goes at 16, and you lose the guy you really want, and then the Bengals make a reach, compared to some other guys on the board at 17. And it feels like tonight there's about 7, 8 options that I would just be absolutely thrilled with for the Bengals at 49. And then quite honestly at 81 too. I think the second round and third round are pretty unique in terms of guys you could love at 49 fall to 81 just because of team need and everything else in the middle round. So this is the day that the Bengals are going to have to make their team better. We knew that going into the draft, regardless of who they took at 17, 49, and 81 are going to be the backbone of this draft. So hopefully they get it right. I would love defense secondary or interior offensive line would be my pick.
Yeah, and the Will Johnson thing,
Scary.
The fact that he dropped out was pretty wild. But man, if you're any team, I think if the reason he dropped out of the first is because of the concerns about that knee, they have the Raiders taking him in the second round. I don't see how you go in the second. I wouldn't use a first or a second on him if the concern is to that degree. Either way.
Agree.
All right, we'll step away for a few. What are the chances? So with the remaining picks, you have 5 picks left. More offensive picks or defensive picks? When we come in on Monday, will the Bengals have taken more offensive players or defensive players with the remaining 5 picks? I'm curious your thoughts on that. We'll get to that when we come back. More Off the Bench when we return. I'm curious if the remaining picks for the Bengals, how many of them will be used on offensive players. The reason I ask is because running back was always a big debate early on. Like, if Ashton Jeanty was available at 17, some Bengals fans were losing their minds when Jake or anybody would say, even James Rapine was saying, hey, if he's there, you really have to consider it. Like, you cannot sit there, even as much need as you have on defense. If you have an impact player like that falls into your lap at 17, you really need to consider it. People thought that was a crazy take, but it didn't matter because it didn't even come close to happening anyways. But obviously, running back, you assume that the Bengals will go that route at some point throughout this draft. How early do you think that they go the running back route? Do they go that route in the second round at all? If Trevion Henderson's there, how do you think that shakes out?
I don't know about the second round. I think 49 might be a little rich for the Bengals to go running back, especially with the gamble they took in the first round. If you were uber confident in your first round pick coming in and being an immediate impact player, which even I don't think the biggest Shemar Stewart fans believe that, then you might have a little bit more of an ability to go with one of those luxury picks if one of those running backs fall to 49. However, I don't think that's the case anymore. I think you have to take guys that are immediate impact guys in the second and third round. Now, maybe running back's the best choice for an immediate impact guy when you get down to 81 in the third round. Say Quinshawn Judkins inexplicably falls. Caleb Johnson falls from Iowa. One of those guys, Cam Scatterbo, falls from Arizona State. Those guys are really, really exciting players that I would love the Bengals to grab at the 81st pick. I just don't think it happens at 49. I wouldn't be too shocked if it happens today. I think it could happen in the second or third round. I think it's a pick that, coupled with Shemar Stewart, would have most Bengals fans scratching their head. However, I do think it would be a good move to grab one of those guys. I think running back's a decent need on this team. However, that certainly has gone on the back burner after Zach Moss's restructure. They restructured Zach Moss's contract on Monday to bring him back. We don't know what the seriousness of that injury is to his neck. Obviously caused him to miss most of the year last year. Didn't look great when he was in. If that's significantly less money down to a vet minimum deal or something along those lines, and you're paying, Samaje Perine and Zach Moss a combined $4 or $5 million, I think running back's certainly still on the table. If that number doesn't come down a ton for Zach Moss, maybe you're not going to draft a running back. So we'll see what happens. Probably need a little bit more of a clear picture on what the Zach Moss plan is to say for sure, but I wouldn't be too shocked if the Bengals went running back today.
What do you running? I know you don't know all the prospects and all that, but obviously if running back is announced, is that something that
I don't want a running back. Not this early. I would take a running back late. I the one name offensively that I would want, not with the next pick, but maybe with that third round pick. I want my guy Harold Fannin. Bring me Harold Fannin. I think there will be more defensive players, to answer your question, than offensive players. Maybe there's a tight end, and maybe there's
that's the one. That's the other one.
Maybe there's a tight end, maybe a wide receiver in the last round. But I do think it'll be more defensive players than offensive players. I wouldn't hate Xavier Watts if you reunite two Notre Dame guys. Fine by me. I know a lot of people I don't think want to draft safety based on what I've read. I don't know. Or
depends on where you stand on Geno Stone.
Yeah, cornerback or safety. I know the Bengals don't have a hit or miss rate when it comes to those guys, but I would want probably more defensive players, given the fact that the defensive player we just got, there's just so many questions on right now, and who knows what's going to be available by the time the Bengals' second pick comes around tonight. But I would venture to say more defense.
All right. Again, we'll be keeping an eye on that. So no set Chatterbox Bengals show, but you will be releasing, Jake, you and the guys from Chatterbox Bengals will be releasing live video reaction to each and every Bengals pick the remainder of the draft, correct?
Yeah, I'm a psycho. I'm not that psycho. We're not going to be live for round 2, round 3, round 4, round 5, round 6, and round 7. But after those Bengals picks, we will have a video posted as soon as it is humanly possible for my Wi-Fi and my fingers. So we'll get that out to you guys as soon as we can. Instant reactions from Craig and I to all the Bengals picks throughout the weekend. So even though we won't be live, just check out Chatterbox Sports YouTube all weekend for the breakdown of all the Bengals picks. We'll have something after the weekend as well, recapping it as a whole, where the Bengals can go from here. Maybe we get a Trey Hendrickson trade over the next couple of days and have a little bit of fun with that too. So it should be a big weekend for the Bengals. I know the first round doesn't have everyone as happy as we might want to be going into the weekend, but still a lot of opportunities for the Bengals to improve this team, and everyone's more important than the last.
So, Mouse Cop, he went back. He found the exact date of the show and the quote, classic Mouse Cop. It was October 2nd. I said, apparently I will become a Bengals fan the second Shedeur Sanders is drafted to Cleveland. That's not even a joke. Verbatim.
Do you think the Bengals had by far the worst pick out of the AFC North? teams?
I'm not a Derek Harmon guy. I would have taken Shemar over Derek Harmon in terms of the Bengals board, so I think he'll certainly work in Pittsburgh in that defense, learning behind Cam Hayward for a couple of years. So when we look back on it, potentially, I think Malachi Starks is a pretty polarizing prospect. I know he's viewed as more of a sure thing in the safety room, has been a consensus top player in this class for a long time, but his coverage stats aren't that great. He's really riding off a huge freshman year, and he's a good player, don't get me wrong, and I'm sure Kyle Hamilton, the versatility he has, is going to be able to cover up for a lot of that as well. We know what the Ravens do with their draft picks. They always work. So, yeah, I think so. I think the Browns had distantly the best draft in the AFC North pretty clearly by getting that extra first-round pick next year and then still grabbing the third best player in this class in Mason Graham. I think that was an unbelievable move at 5. Probably. I think you have to say so. You probably have to say the Bengals had the worst pick because they have the worst track record of making those picks work, and they took the biggest risk. But I would rather have – obviously, I'd rather have Mason Graham, but the Browns were picking in the top 5. I would rather have Shemar Stewart than either of the other guys picked in the AFC North.
That's fair. That's fair.
I liked the Ravens pick. Like if your defense is bad and that's who you take, obviously that's it stands out more. But I just like it because how it complements the Ravens defense. Obviously, you're in a division where you got to play Joe Burrow twice a year, and I think Joe Burrow had a couple good games last year against the Ravens. I'm not 100% sure. I think he threw for 222 and a touchdown and 3 picks or something. I can't remember. No, I mean that pick was all about Joe Burrow. That pick was all about Patrick Mahomes. That pick was all about Josh Allen. The 3 quarterbacks that the Ravens have to get through to finally accomplish their goal of at least getting to a Super Bowl. Has to get through those quarterbacks, and it's all about trying to obviously take care of the secondary and making sure you're strong in the back there. And that's what they did. I like what the Ravens did. I like what all the teams in the back of the draft did. I mean, I thought that the Eagles hit. I thought that the Chiefs made a hell of a pick.
Yeah.
That was, I don't even think anyone doubted that. I think everyone knew where they were going to go there. You have to protect Patrick Mahomes. We saw what happened when you can't protect him. The Eagles getting Jihad. I mean, that was classic Eagles right there.
Yeah.
The Ravens, a classic Ravens pick there in the back. I thought all the teams in the back did a very good job when it's all said and done. But you just mean from like a player perspective, like obviously not a fan of that one. Okay.
The thing about the Chiefs that's super interesting about them picking at 32 this year, obviously they didn't three-peat. They traded with the Eagles to move down from 31 to 32. Eagles got Jahad Campbell. They got Josh Simmons, the tackle from Ohio State. The Chiefs put themselves in a very similar situation that the Bengals did going into this draft. They absolutely had to take a tackle.
Yeah.
If Josh Simmons had went before the Chiefs picked, they probably had to reach on the next tackle. Kingsley Suamatia, their second-round pick last year, was not very good this year. They've tried to fix that offensive line. We saw how it looked against the Eagles in the Super Bowl. It was abysmal. So they had to get a tackle. Now what happens to the Bengals when you have to get a pass rusher? The one you want gets picked the pick before you. What happens to the Chiefs? The best lineman in this class tears his ACL in week 5, and you just get him at 32. So kudos to them. Got a no-doubt starter at left tackle for probably 5 to 7 years. I love when everyone freaks out about an ACL tear or something like that for these prospects. It's 2025. We have modern medicine. We're not putting these guys down because they tore their ACL. They're going to be fine. More often than not, they're going to be fine. So if they're an elite player and they put on elite tape for multiple years and they get hurt and everything along the process of rehab and everything is looking positive, I would not have let Josh Simmons fall to 32, but obviously the rich get richer and the Chiefs get a really, really good player at a position of need.
The Giants, how would you evaluate what they did? For one, good for them for getting Abdul Carter. When you think about how good they are already on that defensive line and how good they are already at getting to the quarterback, and now you add him, I thought they would have had an A+++++, but Jackson Dart really makes me question whether or not that ended up being a good draft for the Giants. Was that a good draft? Would you have traded, if you're a Giants fan, I know we don't talk Giants football here, but overall I thought they had an interesting draft last night because you get Abdul Carter, which is fantastic, and then you trade back in to get your quarterback. I mean, if Jackson Dart hits, that's a hell of a draft. I mean, you got 2 players on both sides of the ball that are going to be a part of your franchise for hopefully a long time for them. But I thought it was a big gamble on Jackson Dart. Would you have traded into the first round if you're the Giants to get Jackson Dart, especially after the Daniel Jones debacle that we just witnessed not too long ago?
Yeah, I would have. I think it was the right move for the Giants to make.
Okay.
I think it's the only move for the Giants to make. Brian Daboll said for months now that Jackson Dart's his guy. There's been a lot of dissension in the Giants facility between Shadur Sanders and Dart, who the second quarterback in this class is. If you tell Brian Daboll in that meeting you can't trade up and take Jackson Dart when we have the assets, why don't you fire him? He doesn't think Tommy DeVito's a starting quarterback. He doesn't think Jameis Winston's a starting quarterback. He knows Russell Wilson's not saving his job. So he's trying to get a quarterback to build his offense around. And if you're not going to let him do that, why are you going to make him be a lame duck coach for 17 games before you move on from him next year? So I think if you're going to have Brian Dable be your coach, who's a guy I really believe in, at least on the offensive side of the ball. I know he's had his struggles in New York, but let's not forget what he did at Alabama as the offensive coordinator for Jalen Hurts, and then in Buffalo for Josh Allen. He turned Josh Allen into what he was now. We had serious bust conversations about Josh Allen before Stephon Diggs and Brian Dable got to Buffalo, and now obviously we all know what that is. The Giants traded pick 34 for pick 25. They also added a third-round pick that they didn't have until March 11th, a compensatory pick, the 99th overall pick, and then a future third-round pick. So this isn't the Falcons giving up a 2026 1, multiple twos. We talked about with the Browns. If you like a quarterback, why in the hell would you take him at 34?
That's okay.
Give up these 2 picks for 25.
I
Get
did
that
contradict
fifth-year
that.
option.
Yeah, because I thought it was done with the Giants, but
Yeah.
they did what I wanted the Browns to do if they were going to force a quarterback.
Right, and you had 34, so you don't have to give up a ton as if you were trading up from the mid-40s or something along those lines. I think this is absolutely the right move for the Giants. I think Dart is absolutely the right quarterback to pick in that situation. He has the highest ceiling of the guys that are the closest to being ready to go. So I think that was definitely the right move for the Giants. And honestly, the biggest thing that they did, which seems to be glossed over, and we just did it talking about their draft, they took the best player in this draft class at 3rd overall at the 2nd best position in football, most important position in football.
When that's already one of your strengths?
Right. They have a defensive line that is dominant, and they add a premier edge rusher.
We saw it last year when they played the Bengals.
Exactly.
Joe Burrow's night was miserable that entire time.
Miserable. Dexter Lawrence is one of the best interior defenders in all of football. He was on pace for 20 sacks before he tore his bicep last year. That's unheard of, other than like Aaron Donald from the interior of a defense. And now they got an Ole Miss quarterback with an elite defense. Last time they had that, they won 2 Super Bowls in 5 years.
Browns trade back from 2. That was like the big surprise right off the bat. Reports started coming out like a little before the draft that they were actively looking to move back from number 2. I love the fact that they got obviously the additional first-round pick next year. They got the additional second-round pick this year. That's why they have 2 second-round picks and 2 third-round picks tonight. Their 2 second-round picks are 2 of the first 4 picks tonight. You didn't, at least I think, you were not a fan of what Cleveland did last night at 2, moving back?
No, because I think when we talk about gambles and risks, and when you have a set commodity, why not take it? That was my whole thing.
Who are you saying is the set commodity?
For the Browns,
Yeah.
Abdul Carter.
Well, they were never taken. It was Travis
Well, it was
Hunter.
Travis Hunter or Abdul. That's what I'm saying. You have a
I think
set.
Travis Hunter's a way bigger gamble than Mason Graham.
I don't know about that. I mean, he was. I mean, by far, everybody was. I mean, I think the Browns tweeted about Travis Hunter earlier in the day.
But what if he can't play both ways?
It's. I mean, I guess it's my understanding that if you drafted him, you'd allow that to happen.
No, I mean if he can't.
Physically,
Like if he's not able to do it at a high level.
then maybe, yeah. I don't know. I think that having the Heisman winner on your team, you can't go wrong with that pick. At least nobody can fault you for it, right? And Abdul Carter, if you would have gone that route as well, you would have had a set commodity. So that was my only issue. Now, again, I think they made up for it, but they're going to benefit for next year. But I still don't fully understand what the Browns' plan would be outside of maybe you're just tanking for Arch because you're going to have 2 presumably top 15 picks next season, and maybe you can work some magic next year. You don't draft a quarterback this year. I still think they draft a quarterback though, right? I mean, I still think you draft.
They are a heavy favorite for Shador.
I don't want them to take. At first I was like, okay, now I'm fine if you go Shador. You take him in the 2nd round, and if Shador doesn't pan out, you don't get the Browns don't get as much backlash if he doesn't pan out if you take him in the 2nd or 3rd later rounds. You take him with the number 2 overall pick and he fails, you just keep adding to that narrative that Cleveland is where quarterbacks go to die. And I'm not saying that narrative isn't factual. It is. I think the Browns know that, which means they have to be careful, which is why they did not stretch and take a quarterback in the 1st round. My problem is I'm not a fan of them taking Shador at number 33 or any quarterback at 33 because I would have rather them traded back into the 1st round for everything we talked about with why the Giants did. You would get an extra 5th year if you would have just traded up to take him in the back end of that. My thing is I don't really want them to draft a quarterback now moving forward because you still have Deshaun's contract working against you this season and next season. I'd rather them draft a quarterback next season so that's 1 less year where you have to ignore, where you don't get to maximize your rookie contract window.
Also, you're debating there 4 years versus 2 years.
Yeah. So now not only do you not get that extra 5th year, The first year is still wasted by Deshaun's money eating up most of the cap. And then the next year would be the first real year where that money's off, but you still have the cap hit that would still impact that. I would rather get a much fresher start taking a quarterback in the first round of next year. Plus, the team you traded with, as much as I like Trevor Lawrence, and I like Trevor Lawrence. I don't think he's panned out to be what he's supposed to be. I think there's something there. Jacksonville, very realistically, as you said, Elliot, could be picking in the top 15 next year. The Browns could realistically be picking in the top 15, top 10 next year. Those are two premium high first-round picks that they could package together to move up and take whoever the hell that they wanted if it's positioned that way. I love what they did. And the fact that they have 2 of the top 4 picks tonight and 2 more picks in the third round because of the Amari Cooper deal. I love that Amari Cooper deal now as we sit here. So, yeah, I think they're in good shape. I just don't want them to take a quarterback. I don't want them to take Shador at number 33, not just because I don't want to have to, face the fire of wearing a Bengals jersey starting Monday, any of that. I just don't want them to go the quarterback route at all. Just go compete with Joe Flacco. Put all your eggs in the Joe Flacco basket. Go compete with Jerry Jeudy and Cedric Tillman and David Njoku. David Njoku had his best season, ironically enough, with Joe Flacco the last time he was here. You just added Mason Graham. They're going to continue to add pieces on defense. They're going to add another wide receiver. Probably going to get Trevion Henderson or a running back with that second pick in the third round tonight. So I think Cleveland, they're just going to try and see if, hey, we could win this year and compete, great. If not, oh well, we have 2 first-round picks next year and a chance to go get our quarterback then. I wouldn't waste a pick on a quarterback this year at all.
Thoughts on this plan? Okay. Just let me spitball here for a little bit. You think there's a no-brainer pick that they should take at 33? Like, is there a Mike Green or a Nick Manwari that you adore at 33?
Unfortunately, no.
Okay. I still would go best player available at 33. Whatever the Browns have on their board, probably a defender just because of the way it shook out. Maybe offensive line if you want to move someone down into the interior.
I wish Will Johnson's knee wasn't the issue.
Right.
I would love
be a
Will
no-brainer.
Johnson. Yeah.
It would be an absolute no-brainer, but I don't think you can make that pick at 33 with the question marks.
Yep.
34 is the Texans. They're not taking a quarterback. They have C.J. Stroud. 35 is the Titans. They're spoken for. They just took Cam Ward first overall. You're then 36 and the Raiders are 37. Why don't you take best player available at 33? As soon as you're on the clock at 36, call the Raiders, say you want Shador, you switch with us right now. Get an extra mid-round pick.
Yep.
Move back one spot and then take the best defensive player you want. Picking right ahead of the Raiders there, 36 and 37, where they're really the only other team that's been heavily connected to Shador Sanders that would want him in the second round. They can sit him behind Geno Smith. He can learn from Pete Carroll. I think that's something that makes a lot of sense for both the Raiders and Shador. I think that would be a home run for the Browns. If you can capitalize on getting a really good player at 33 and then not moving back any further than 37, that would be wizardry by Andrew Berry and the Cleveland Browns.
You know them. All of the wizardry is always the term that people use with the Browns in the draft.
Yeah, that's how I describe them.
They have
no
so many
offense.
picks.
No
Man.
Voldemort.
disrespect.
I call him Voldemort. By the way, if you're watching right now in the chat, give the chat a like. I believe it was put in the chat that I think the show's canceled if we don't get 75. So let's get 30 more likes. If you're on your phone, all you got to do, you flip your phone vertically, you hit the thumbs up. If you're on your laptop, it's right there, the thumbs up. If you're watching on your television, because I do know there's a lot of TV watchers out there, well, then I don't think you really can. But like it in spirit. Go out and say, you know what, I like them. And maybe we'll get it in the back end. But we need 30 more.
Mark said try asking, not telling.
Huh?
Mark said try asking, not telling.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please?
There you go.
Thanks. 30 more likes. We need 30 more likes, everybody.
30, where are we at right now?
20 more likes.
20 more likes. Do we get 10 in that?
We're at 55.
Oh, wow, we just jumped up. Yeah,
55, 55, 60, 60, 65, 70, 75, 75, 80.
18 likes.
so just get us to 75. Just get us to 75 and the show continues. If not, I'm fired and we're all canceled. So that's what it's going to be. Everybody, let's roll on here. Let's take a short break and then we'll come back. Yeah?
Yeah. We'll be right
ESPN
back.
14.
Look at you.
Well, it was just
work at
I
radio?
felt like we were going a little bit over there. ESPN 1410 Wing AM.
All right, and we are back off the bench, presented by UDF. Justin Kinner, Jacob Tissett, Elliot Rearing with you here. Chatterbox Sports on YouTube. Continue to give the stream a like. What's our like count up to?
67.
Getting
67.
closer.
You know, I used to do this early on in the show, Kenner. I used to give the chat milestones. If they hit it, I would do a punishment.
Yeah, you just get hurt.
Yeah, so here's what I'll do. If we get 120 likes today, I'll take another pie to the face. Kenner can pie me.
Frozen?
Frozen, yeah. So that'll hurt.
Yeah, bloody nose.
Bloody nose everywhere. That's what it'll be. So if we get to 120 likes, that's what I'll do. I'll do it next week, and we'll have a grand old time.
Chat's asking if you would maybe consider eating like the first cricket of your life for 100 likes.
Now, it's interesting you say that because I did eat the wing. I did eat the wing of that cricket before I spit it out. People don't credit me for that wing, but I couldn't spit it all out. It was just the body that I spit out, not the wing. The wings are separate. But all right.
We are at 70.
70. Get us to
got a few more.
75.
71.
So 120. We need 120 likes
72.
for you to get the pie to the face.
120 gets me to the pie.
Okay.
75
keeps
the show
keeps the
going.
show alive.
There
Puts
you go.
food on the table for my family.
That's right.
We have almost 200 people watching. We can get to 120.
That's
120.
right.
Sir Boy
Give it
says
that
he
thumbs up.
remembers when you only ate the wing.
Thank you, Sir Boy. It means a lot. For those listening on the radio, you don't understand any of that. But nonetheless, please, if you're listening on the radio, retroactively go back in time and give the show a like. It would mean a lot to me.
Did you see the Jackson Dart clip with John Gruden? Obviously, Gruden sits there and does his, meets with all the QB prospects. And, I'm not a big Jackson Dart guy. So I was, Giants trade up and get him or whatever. But then all the videos of him start to make its rounds. And this I thought this was uncomfortable. I don't know. Take a look. This was Jackson Dart, obviously, kind of doing his sit down with Gruden. And Gruden even looks at him like, yeah, this is weird. Take a look. World. Like, Gruden's a weird character himself. The fact that he was even like, what the heck is that? I mean, like, he made Gruden uncomfortable, and that's tough to do.
If you've been watching Gruden QB camp when it was at ESPN or however many of the years he's been breaking down quarterback play, there's nothing in the world that drives him crazier than the clap snap count. And this is the reason why a lot of people were against Jackson Dart in this process. Ole Miss's offense is about 65% RPO. It's all decisions made for him by how the defense aligns. It's a lot of clap cadence. It's a lot of quick motion. It's a lot of stuff that doesn't translate to the NFL. And you see that in his QB camp where I was trying to find the clip. I couldn't find it for you guys. But Will Howard, when he was asked the same question 2 weeks ago at Gruden's QB camp, he did both a shotgun and under center, hard count, full cadence, blue 18, double clap, all that stuff. That's an NFL quarterback. That's something that translates. You have to do a cadence in the NFL. You can't just sit back there and clap your hands once or twice. And a hard count can't be, no one's jumping at that. You think Myles Garrett's jumping at, no. I don't understand why he seemed so happy about him being a clap guy. He seemed like he took pride in it for doing it for 3 years by not having a cadence. If I'm Jackson Dart, I know I'm going to something like that. If I get clapped for the last 3 years, I'm making up a cadence by the time I get there.
Yeah.
Like, I just don't understand it. And that's the point of worry comes in where maybe he's not a guy that's willing to change his ways to go to the NFL. He's not a guy that's willing to learn, stuff he's uncomfortable with. And that should be a level of concern maybe for some teams. Obviously wasn't for the Giants. They felt good enough to move up and go get him. I think he's a talented kid, but a lot of the habits he has at Ole Miss, that being a pretty good example of what it is, are not going to translate to the NFL.
I do love the double clap. Oh, you think
Purple.
you saw you think the one clap was something? I got something special for you. Two claps.
Also, he just aired out the fact that you're one clap or two clap. I mean, that's the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
It's also like,
could you imagine?
there's no variation.
Yeah, you're doing.
I'm either
it,
clapping once or twice.
Yeah, and you're doing it in reverse. I feel like if you were the real thing would be two,
Like
and
a
the
little
other
quick count.
Yeah, like that seems dumb. But good luck. I don't know. I didn't think either Shedeur or Jackson Dart. I think none of those quarterbacks, in my opinion, are changing the course of your franchise. And that's why they fell so far, and that's why they probably would have kept falling. If I were the Giants, I probably wouldn't have made that second trade, and I would have just taking whatever one's going to be available when it comes back around, because they would have been, one of them would have been available,
Right.
and you just take them.
I'm going to ask you a leading question here.
Sure.
Which quarterback, if they played to their ceiling, do you think can change an NFL franchise in this draft class?
Out of those two,
No,
or
out of
out of
all of
anybody.
them. If they played to their ceiling.
I like Milroe. Milroe, I think could be a Cleveland Brown. There's a non-zero chance, right?
There's a 0% chance.
Really?
Because what does it say in the Bible? God gives only the battles that he knows you can handle.
I see.
And I've already been battling through the Shemar Stewart thing, and I'm getting there, and I'm getting okay with it. I can't handle Jalen Milroe in the division.
I see.
No Steelers, no Browns. So, yeah,
You
he's not
can
going to put
handle
that on my
Milroe in the
plate.
division because it won't go well.
But I want it to go
wouldn't
well.
have to. What?
But I want it to go well.
Well, there you go. There you go. All right. We'll close. Usually we open up the show with our headlines, but we figured with everyone obviously fired up about the Bengals and the first round of the draft last night, we wanted to dive right into it. We appreciate everyone who's hung out with us today. Obviously, we're not done yet, but continue to give the show a like. We got up to 75. Maybe it's still climbing. We need 120. We need those likes to get up. We only have another 25 minutes of the show, so we have to get up to 120 for Elliot to take a pie to the face next week. So physical comedy. He likes the physical comedy. He wants the pie to the face, but that only happens if we get up to 120 likes. So we're urging you and challenging you to rise up to the occasion. Get us to 120 likes before the end of the show today. But let's kick it over to our guy Elliot for Elliot's headlines.
Score updates, breaking news,
Feels
local
dirty
and
doing
national
it to close out the show.
Whatever's
Yeah, it
going on
does.
in the world of sports, Elliot has you covered.
That's the whole bit. You start off the
Off the
show with
bench
it, like
brings
what
you
we
Elliot's
missed.
headlines.
But we already know what we missed because we go past the time.
Well, the fun thing about the NFL draft happening when it does is everyone forgets about the playoffs.
That's right.
Because the NFL owns this country.
Well, here's the thing too. Yeah, I mean, if you were thinking about like when's the NFL schedule release going to be, well, we have the release date, and then I'm sure at soon in the near future, maybe not this year, but maybe next year, we'll have the release date for the release date for the release date.
My question is, when do they institute a release date for the opponents? Because they just tweet that like
Yeah.
the middle of the season.
Okay.
We're going to get a release date for the opponents before the release date of the schedule, and then the release date of the schedule.
Interesting. I like that a lot.
I think it'd be fun.
I think that'll be good, and they should go one opponent per month.
That's good. That's good. I like how they usually.
Because you already know the
out.
division. You already know the divisions. in
Right.
there.
Right. Yeah. No, that is tough.
So, yeah, just more release dates, please, NFL, if you could. Headlines. The Athletics. This is silly to do it. The Athletics came back in the ninth to beat the Rangers 4-3 last night. The Rays, they trailed by 1 in the ninth. They would go on to win by 3 in the 10th. The Angels, they beat the Pirates 4-3. They trailed 3-0 early. The Orioles, they win 2-1 over the Nationals. The Royals, they beat the Rockies in Colorado in Game 2 and Game 1 of a doubleheader. 6-2 and 7-4, the final scores there. So the red-hot Rockies take on the Cincinnati Reds this weekend. The Rockies are a spectacular 4-20. Shout out #420. Continuing on, the White Sox, they shut out the Twins 3-0. The Red Sox, they fall to the Mariners 4-3, and the Brewers, they lost yet again to the Giants, this time 6-5. Brewers had a 5-2 lead, could not hold on. Heading over to the Hockey League, the Jets, they lose to the Blues 7-2. They still lead the series, however, 2-1. 2-1. The Jets lead. The Minnesota Wild, they go up 2-1 on the Golden Knights with a 5-2 victory. The Maple Leafs and the Senators, they go to overtime again, where the Maple Leafs are victorious. Toronto leads 3-0. It could be Canada's year. We always say it's Canada's year. Maybe this is the year it's for Canada. The Panthers beat the Lightning 2-0 yesterday to lead the series now 2-0. So good for the Panthers. Heading over to the association and basketball, there were some good games last night. The Knicks, they hang on to beat the Pistons 118-116. Karl Anthony Towns scored 31, Brunson scoring 30. Hardaway and Cunningham each had 24 in the losing effort there for the Pistons. The Thunder at one point, and this was absolutely crazy, and honestly I didn't know this until I woke up this morning, the Thunder trailed by 30 last night.
Sure did.
They trailed by 29 points. The previous two games, by the way, the Thunder have won by 50 and 20. They trailed last night by 29, nearly 30 points. They came back, I think outscored them by legitimately 15 every quarter in the third and the fourth, and they beat the Grizzlies 114-108.
Largest halftime comeback in playoff history.
How about that?
Or maybe first round history, but largest halftime comeback. They held the Grizzlies, just looking at this box score now, 40 points in the first quarter for the Grizzlies.
Yeah.
37 points in the second quarter. 18 in the third,
Oh, no.
13 in the fourth.
Oh, boy.
That is unbelievable.
Just not going to get it done, is it? It's just not going to get it done.
I think we do have to have, at some point, I know we're not a basketball show, we are going to have the conversation at some point that this Thunder team might be historically good.
Yeah.
They're the 5th ranked team in some advanced metrics in terms of production and efficiency and everything along those lines.
Sure.
Chet Holmgren had 24 points last night. Jalen Williams, 26. Shai Gilgeous-Alexander, 31, 10 free throws. But, I mean, they are just a really, really special team. Deep, great coach. He's
ton of
unbelievable.
picks.
A ton of picks.
It's a slight chance, but they have a chance to potentially get the number 1 overall pick. It's unlikely, but I'm just saying, like they're in the lottery, so they're because of all those additional draft picks they've accrued over the years. But yeah, they're an interesting one. I think the reason I struggle buying into these teams that have great records in the regular season is because this era, not every team values the regular season. So you'll get these young upstart teams who, teams that have rebuilt in recent years, and now all the pieces have come together. So they're excited. They've put all the pieces together. The Cavs and the Thunder, they're out there playing their asses off. They play at a high level. But then you get those veteran teams, they're doing load management. They're not playing hard every single night. Their mindset is, we just got to get into the playoffs. Not the play-in, but we just need to get into the playoffs, and then we'll flip that switch. And then the switch gets flipped, and then the playoffs, and the seeding gets all thrown off, and then everyone looks mismatched. That might not be the case here. The Thunder might actually be as good as they looked in the regular season. That's why I struggle giving a lot of teams credit in the regular season, because not everyone's playing hard, not everyone's trying hard. I think that's the case. I just think the Thunder are trying hard, and they are that good, as Jacob said.
Yeah.
The Cavs is very similar. They're the Eastern Conference version of what we're watching over there with the Thunder.
That's right. The Clippers, they now lead the series 2-1 after a 117-83 blowout over the Nuggets.
Speaking of the Thunder, give me the Clippers in round 2.
Clippers in round 2?
Yeah, to beat the Thunder.
Really? Yeah. Okay. I like Clippers, again, notoriously have never made the conference finals, right?
Kawhi has never played this well this late in the season for them.
Okay. All right.
It's pretty wild. He's been healthy, too.
Yeah, there you go.
Knock on wood. Those. Oh, we have one more headline. This is an Elliott headline. No player who has ever had their jersey retired only 6 months, I think, since the end of the college football season, has subsequently not been drafted in the first round of the NFL draft when they were supposed to. So shout out to Shedeur Sanders for that. Again, that stat cannot be verified.
Let's play a game called Guess What Shedeur's odds were to go in the first round when the first pick happened last night.
I'm going to say minus 1,000.
How about minus 2,000?
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, boy.
That's quite a drop.
Oh, boy.
That's quite a
Is
drop.
this worse than Levis, or is it just the name?
It's worse than Levis because he made it worse than Levis because of how much talking he did. His dad made it worse by how much talking he did. I'm not, like, that's the thing, too. They've put us in position to sound like we're anti-Sanders. Like, his dad keeps doing this thing where, like, we all know why everyone's hating. It's because it's because of his last name. And I'm like, no, the last name is why people want to cheer for him. The last name is a brand. The last name is why people want you to work out. But when you're so damn arrogant, people didn't like it with Baker Mayfield. People didn't like it with Aaron Rodgers. We don't need to make this something that's not. It is simply when you're that cocky and arrogant, it rubs a lot of teams and a lot of people the wrong way. Aaron Rodgers, that's one of the reasons he dropped. He rubbed a lot of people the wrong way during his draft process, and that's one reason he dropped. So Baker, I know, went number 1 overall, but Cleveland's Cleveland. They do a lot of unorthodox things, but Baker rubbed a lot of teams the wrong way during his pre-draft evaluation meetings and interviews and stuff. So is what it is. How far do you think he drops in the second? Because we're just automatic. We're as confident he goes early in the second as we were he would go in the first. I wonder if he could drop in the second.
Look, at this point, why not be optimistic? I'm hoping for day 3. Get him out of the second and third round. Let's have some fun this weekend. Let's see what happens in round 4. Yeah, I think someone's going to make the choice to take him. And if it's not the Browns at 33 or 36, I think it's probably going to be the Steelers the next time they're up, or the Raiders move around for him. Shedeur Sanders is going to go in the second round. I'm pretty confident in that. I don't think it's the smartest pick for whatever team makes that decision, but I think it will be a pick that's made. I just don't see him falling all the way to the third round or into day 3, no matter how fun that might be for the content.
Were you surprised when the Steelers were up? Were you surprised that they passed on the quarterback there?
I was.
No.
I was too. I thought for sure I bought into all the hype. That's the problem. Not like the Steelers hype, but the media hype. It felt like it was trending in that right direction. It just felt like, oh yeah, watch, he'll drop to the Steelers and work, and it'll work. And that'll be all of our
The
luck.
only draft bet I won last night was Shedeur Sanders over 21.5. So, I mean, I lost on first-round running backs, lost on first-round quarterbacks, but Shedeur Sanders going to the Steelers, that just doesn't feel like a Tomlin pick to me. It just doesn't, to reach on a quarterback, and that's one of very few NFL teams, maybe one of the only NFL teams with one voice in the room. You have Jerry Jones in Dallas, and you have Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh, and those guys make all the decisions for their teams. And I don't think Mike Tomlin is reaching for Shedeur Sanders at pick 21. You just saw what happened when they did that with Kenny Pickett. I don't think he's making that same mistake again. Derek Harmon fell into their lap. He's going to sit behind Cam Hayward for a year or two, and then he's going to hit the ground running when Cam Hayward ages out of the middle of that defense and be a really good player. That's what the Steelers do, and that's why they're consistently good, is because they made their mistake with Kenny Pickett, and they're not going to make that mistake again. They learned from it. So we can argue about 9-8 and all that good stuff all we want about how painful that might be for the fan base, but the way you lose 9-8, and I'm not talking about going 10-7, I'm talking about going 5-12, is drafting Shedeur Sanders at 20. I think reaching on a quarterback that's not that good is how you lose this stretch of being competitive. So kudos to the Steelers for not caving to that pressure and taking a player that they believed in at that spot instead of reaching for someone because of positional value or whatever reason it would be to take him.
One more headline. Evan Mobley wins Defensive Player of the Year, first Cavalier to win the award.
Oh, very cool.
And he didn't have to campaign to do it. He didn't have to, beg for it like our guy Draymond.
There's very few things in the world. A nice sunny Friday, a clear weather report Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Draymond Green being upset. There's like the three greatest things in the world. I hate Draymond Green. He's an absolute bum. And for him to go on, a 3-month podcast tour to try to win himself Defensive Player of the Year, it's good news.
He's a prime example of, if he's on my team, I love him. But he's not, so I'm out. But,
yeah.
But Mobley, he just did his thing quietly all year. Didn't have to beg for it, so there you go. Mouse Cop, yes, Monday, he's confident that I will be a Bengals fan. He's confident the Browns are taking Shedeur. So we'll find out on Monday. But, no, we're done on radio. That wraps it up for us. Yeah. Last time I touched that helmet, I threw it, so I try to stay away from it, A little PTSD, But that wraps it up for us on radio. We'll continue on the stream. By the way, what's our count up to? 87. Elliot, you're never going to get that pie to the face next week.
I know. You have to get to 120 before the show ends, so the next 14 minutes.
There are 183 people watching right now at this exact second. If we could get that like count up to 120, Elliot will take a pie to the face next week. So there you go. All right, that wraps it up for us on radio. We'll continue on the stream. Until next week, this has been Off the Bench presented by UDF. Let's just talk now.
That's right.
Just
a little chit chat. Welcome on in, everybody. You are already here, but welcome on in again. We're here for the YouTube side, and here's what we're gonna do, Kenner.
95.
You haven't done it yet, and we're gonna go off the cuff. You have to give the chat a top 5. You have to go.
I can't because I stay out of the chat
You have
because
to.
of my
It
feelings.
doesn't matter. Then you better go find 5 names right now and you rank them in order. That's what you have to do right now. The first ever Kenner Chat Power Rankings. With no graphics or anything. You just got to run down the list, go through today's chat, name the names, and see who you got. So you start with 5 and go down to 1.
Well, you got to give me a second. That's a lot
I'll give you a second. I'll give you a second. You can look.
All right.
That's fine.
Y'all talk amongst yourselves. Let me
That's
put this
fine.
together.
I'll give you the necessary time to figure this out. There's a couple great chatters in there. I would like to say. I mean, there's Mark Fetters hasn't missed a chat power rankings in 2 years now. So just a little heads up for you.
Is this Elliot's list or Kinner's list?
That's right. You're right. It's Kinner's list. Kinner's list. I'm sorry. It's
talk
Kinner's
amongst
list.
yourselves.
The like count is at what now? Let's see.
96.
I don't know why my YouTube makes me refresh.
Yeah, his goes up. I have to hit refresh.
Yeah.
on
I'm in the
mine.
back end.
What?
I'm producing.
Oh.
I see. Yeah. Let's hear. Yeah, Naughty. He's gonna get in there. He's gonna get you in there. But okay. Yeah. So the draft last night, we're done talking about it. But I will say there wasn't any. I feel like there wasn't a big moment. I feel like there. I mean, I know the Browns trade happened, and maybe if you want to count the Giants trade that happened towards the end, but I feel like there wasn't a big moment. I want a big moment. I want a splash. I want a couple of superstars traded for a first pick.
What was the last splash in draft like?
I think that was one of the bigger draft moments we've seen in a long time.
Really?
Last night.
But what like? Do you have an example?
Travis Hunter's a two-way Heisman winner, and they moved out of pick 2 to.
I'm trying.
Moved
trying
out
to
of
think of
5.
one,
That's
though.
a
Yeah.
marquee trade.
I think so too. I agree, but I also know what he's saying, where it's like that trade happens in a non-quarterback heavy draft. When was the last time someone shot all the way up?
Bryce Young.
I also
2 years ago.
And by the way,
happened so
I will
early.
say it hurts it a little bit that I already knew that trade was coming. I mean, that trade was
Who
reported.
knew that? That trade, you didn't know about that trade until 2 hours before the draft happened. No one knew the Jaguars talked to Travis Hunter until 2 hours before the draft happened. We had no list of meetings for
They
the
said
Jaguars.
that the Browns were trading that pick at noon.
They were listening to calls. We didn't have any idea the Jaguars were moving up until about 90 minutes, 2 hours before the draft.
I'm almost certain that the Browns were trading that. At least
Correct.
Schefter
They were
tweeted it.
listening to calls. We did not know who was moving up. That was
I
a
knew.
huge shock.
Well, I knew.
Well, no one else did.
I
To say
knew.
that draft last night wasn't a surprise is ridiculous. It was one of the most surprising drafts in recent history. Tyler Warren was a consensus top 10 pick. He went as the second tight end. Kelvin Banks was projected outside the top 15. He went 9th. Tyler Booker all the way up to 12th. Jalen Walker falling out of the top 10 to the 15th, but he was minus 300 to go top 10. That was a shocking draft. Shedeur Sanders falling out at minus 2,000. I think there's more storylines of that draft than almost any draft in recent history.
Damn. Well, for me, it wasn't good enough. I need more excitement. I need more. And maybe it probably has a lot to do with the quarterbacks. I know the quarterbacks more than anybody else, and there wasn't a lot of quarterbacks last night. That's just a fact. I will say the Tyler Warren thing falling down to the Colts is outrageous. I don't know why. I mean, I like the Michigan kid, but he's not as good as Tyler Warren, right?
They have to believe in Cole Kmet. If you're the Bears, you got to believe in Cole Kmet. Yeah, I don't think Colston Loveland's as good of a tight end as Tyler Warren, but I think he's probably a better receiver. So that's the decision they made there.
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. In terms of non-NFL news yesterday, not a ton, but I did have a bet last night on the under in the Tampa Bay Rays versus Arizona Diamondbacks game.
There you go.
It lost in the 9th inning. Unfortunately, they tied it, and it was to win $400. So I was very, very sad around midnight last night when that lost. Heartbroken would be the better word to use. We did ride on a bet for your guy to get drafted by the Bengals. That lost. But then I made up with the pick with Chargers to get a running back plus 350. Tremendous value and sharp by Elliott. Kinner, you got your 5 names yet?
Working on it.
How do you not have 5 names yet? I've stalled as long as I could possibly stall. I got Jacob to yell at me for 5 minutes.
Trying to find more than 5 people that have commented.
Huh?
Hold on.
Now this is just awkward. Now I've put Kinner to a task that's impossible.
I've reversed it. I've put it back on you.
Yeah, it's a punishment for me for starting this. I shouldn't have done it. That's what I shouldn't have done.
So far,
You have your fifth?
you have to put Mark Fetters on there.
Okay, but
Mark
what
Fetters
number?
on. I only have 4.
Okay, give me your numbers.
I am 4.
4.
At number 4, Mark Fetters.
Okay, all right.
All right. I do have Mouse Cop coming in.
Wow.
At number 3, he keeps me honest. He may not
All right.
like me. That's totally fine. He may not like me. I brought it upon myself. We got off to a rocky start. You told me not to poke the bear, and I think one of the first shows I did, I poked the bear.
Because
you told me not to, and I did. I went a little aggressive. I went hard in the paint. I didn't box out, and I got dunked on.
Yeah, you didn't know what you were doing there.
And now there's no olive branch. I thought we were going to meet at the first 4 game. I was going to extend an olive branch, buy him a beer. But I had too many beers myself, so I really was, I hung out with Reed that night. I wasn't very coherent that night, to be honest with you.
Mouse Cop waits in the shadows.
I'm sure he does. I put David Shaw in there. David Shaw is a longtime rival.
I like that.
We go back many, many years. He's a longtime supporter of any of the shows I've been on, so I appreciate him.
Have you resolved the issue where you kicked him off the program for a month?
He deserved that.
Well, he needs suspension sometimes.
Suspension.
It was an F-bomb.
You dropped an F-bomb on air?
Yep.
But don't you have the bleep button at your station?
Don't matter.
It's Kinner's fault?
But I'm saying you just hit the button.
Well, suspend him.
Yeah, but we still
Broke the rules.
For a month, though?
Yes.
Now, it was a second offense.
Oh, it was a second offense.
Yeah. So...
Okay.
I mean, he has a history there. He's been better. There's a history there. Harry. Shout out to Harry. He's on the list.
Harry's your number one?
Yes, he's been bouncing back from my show to this show.
So that's the first ever number one. I'm almost certain.
Kinner's done the rankings before.
Huh?
Kinner's done the rankings before.
Has he?
I have. It was like a long time ago. So by the way, so that's 4. You know who I'm going to put at number 1? Because he didn't even chime in today, which means he didn't say anything mean about me today. I'm going to put Everett at number 1.
There you go. There you go.
He may not have chose not to say something mean about me. He just hasn't said something mean about me because he's not in the chat today. So
I just think he wasn't there.
That's what I mean. So therefore, I appreciate it.
By the way, we'll go to Steve real quick to end the show. Steve Allen on Twitter, a couple of tweets here.
Steve Allen needs to be number 1 because he may not be in the chat.
Steve Allen should be
in the
number
chat.
one.
He's not a chatter.
He's
but
not in the chat,
he's
but
a
on
viewer.
Twitter. Yeah.
Yeah.
So shout out to
Steve Allen, he added us. My first thought after round 1 was Zach Taylor just bet his job that this guy is going to turn into something he hasn't been yet. If they miss the playoffs again and go backwards on defense, he is going to be fired. He's a combine warrior.
If they miss the playoffs again, I think his seat might get hot.
I think his seat's hot.
Yeah, it's not.
He's not fired yet. I think his seat's warm. Steve Allen, again, to be contradictory, I said before the draft, half joking, I would take Ibuka, but I would have preferred that pick. Then when Higgins is ready to walk, you see if you have his younger replacement to re-sign or a running back, then get O-line.
I mean, you'd be playing out Emeka Ibuka in that situation all the way through a rookie contract.
Yeah.
And then you'd be playing him just the 5th-year option without T. Higgins, and that's assuming T. Higgins is not worthy of any kind of extension or restructure or adding a year or anything along those next 4 years. So I wouldn't necessarily go that route. I would have loved Emeka Ibuka at 17 if we would have separated from T. Higgins this offseason. I think that would have been a great match for the Bengals in the middle of the first round, an uber-productive wide receiver from a university that just churns them out. So big night last night for wide receiver U debates. Also, Ohio State first team ever to have 4 receivers in the first round 4 straight years. And it was 5.
How about that?
Yeah, pretty cool.
Wide receiver U.
We have 5 minutes.
It's amazing. One school is wide receiver U, DBU, D-line U. That's probably it.
And
No
at least there's a national championship to pair with it because you could only brag about that for so long before all of a sudden the narrative is, well, that's a lot of talent to not have a championship to show for it. At least Ryan Day was able to get that last year.
Yeah.
By the way, we're sitting at 105. We have 5 minutes. We have 4 minutes now. We got to get to 120. There's 168 people remaining in the chat, or at least viewing right now. We have to get this up to 120 for Elliott to take a pie to the face next week. It was at 106. It went to 105. Someone took one off. I mean,
now it's at 104.
Is it really? Are you unliking it?
I should unlike it. Now I will.
Yeah, I was going to say. But there you go. Hey, the Reds, anything positive about the Reds before we head into this big series with the Rockies?
Tough place to play.
They better win. They better win. There's no excuse. Did you see the money line?
What do you mean there's no excuse?
Did you see the money line today?
No.
Minus 115. Andrew Abbott versus a guy who's 0-4 on a team that has 4 wins.
Can you say there's no excuse?
They play it's a tough place to play.
It's a tough place to
That's
play.
what they always say.
Think about how thin their blood's going to be.
Out of the 4 wins the Rockies have, 3 of them are at home.
Which is, I mean, they're certainly, 3-9 at home?
Yeah.
It's pretty good.
It's almost
40%.
You're almost halfway to being halfway.
You got 3 at Colorado, then 4 with the Cardinals at home.
You got to sweep Colorado so we can just act like we won both these series, right?
Correct.
Yeah.
Are we splitting this? No, you can't split. It's a 3-game series. The Cardinals are a 4-game. Sorry. 2-1, lose 1-2, get swept, sweep.
Again, if they lose, I'll mark the season over if they lose this series.
Oh!
The 2025 season, we will have to redo the intro. I will end the season if they lose this
For
season.
the first time this year, we are on season overwatch.
Yeah, I will.
Official off the bench, Elliott Rearing season overwatch.
Monday's
Colorado.
a huge show. Monday, the whole vibe of this show could be completely different because
the Red season could be over. The Bengals season could be over.
Kinner could be a Bengals
fan. So his new team.
What would you do if your season ended because of a bad draft the minute you became a Bengals fan?
I would feel right at home.
Wow. Getting some last shots in.
I would feel right at home as a Browns fan. Just going over to the other Ohio team, not feeling great coming out of the draft. But either way, one more refresh. I don't think we're going to get it. I think we got our 100+ likes, but I don't think you're going to get your pie to the face. 107.
Damn. Almost had it. By the way, I believe Neil Harris in the chat says someone on Chatterbox should cover Ohio State sports. I don't think there's a better person to do it than me, who might be
That's true.
the next up and coming Ohio State fan.
You are the next biggest Ohio State fan.
It's a completely different vibe Monday. Ohio State fan Elliott, Bengals fan Kinner, Jacob.
Jacob's here as well.
Short hair Jacob. He just started
That's right.
earlier.
That's right.
I keep forgetting the short hair. It's throwing me off.
Yeah, tucked it in a hat.
When is the cutoff for the Bengals season to be over, Elliot? No, it's week 1. If they lose week 1 next year, it's over.
I'm prepared to deem it over if they screw up day 2 and 3.
Oh, really?
Oh yeah.
Like, can they really screw it up though? Like, how far bad can they? I don't think they can screw it up.
I think these next 4 picks are way more important than 17 was.
I guess we'll see. I think the Bengals will make the right call.
I do too.
I think they'll make the right call.
I do too.
Last update, Kinner, before you head out. Refresh.
I refreshed it. It's spinning. 109. We're going to be 11 short. They have 1 minute.
I heard the chimes.
You did?
I mean,
Guys, we got to get to
the official
120.
Hamilton Church bells say that it's noon.
My phone says 11:59. Oh,
You believe
the church
Steve
is
Jobs or Hamilton? I mean, that's the debate, right?
I'm not throwing away my shot. Thank you very much for listening today. ESPN 1410, Wing AM, Chatterbox Sports, Off the Bench, presented by United Dairy Farmers
110.
with Elliot,
111.
Jacob,
Speed this intro.
and
Outro.
Kinner.
One more refresh. It's no way. We are sitting at, and we'll end at 111.
That's
Folks,
it.
you had one job. But we appreciate you guys either way. Molly says fire Kinner. Classic. All right, until next week.
Love you guys. Box lunch in a bit.
Have a good weekend.